Chapter 22-21. Mountain of Corpses on the Vast Milky Way Battlefield. Lin Feng's appearance didn't astonish people too much. People were just surprised to see so many people die fighting against Lin Feng. Most people just sighed, another terrifying killer. Someone stood in the air and shivered. He looked after the demon lights which had disappeared. He stared at Lin Feng. A group of people from hell died against Lin Feng. How strong was he? He was just at the top of the Huangqi layer. But he was already so strong. No matter how strong his opponents were, one strike, and he managed to crush his enemies. Nobody could stop him. Even an army couldn't stop him. How could he be so strong? At that moment Lin Feng continued moving. Around him, death intent rolled in waves. He looked like a demon, his eyes filled with demon energies. Some people continued moving towards him to kill him, but were slaughtered instead. Nobody could stop him. 7 days later, Lin Feng was standing at the top of a mountain and gazing into the distance. He wouldn't have thought that he would be so unlucky. The celestial country had just opened. He needed to wait for almost a year to get out. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. The air began to hum quietly. When a passing person saw the light above Lin Feng's head, he was stupefied. This guy was so audacious. He was from the other side, and he dared stay there as if nothing had happened. On top of that, he was seated cross-legged. He probably considered everybody and everything beneath his notice. How arrogant. However, many people saw all the corpses around him and didn't get any closer. He was probably extremely strong. More and more people appeared there and gathered around Lin Feng. They wanted to kill him. They felt ashamed because he had come from the other side, and he had killed so many of their people. "Kill him," said someone coldly. "Everybody, let's attack him together," proposed some people. They headed towards the top of the mountain. Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. Some horrible shrieks spread through the air. Death and cursing strength surged around him and crushed some people. Lin Feng could kill those people in the blink of an eye. The crowd was astonished. They screamed out, "Die!" Lin Feng looked expressionless, his eyes filled with death qi. There were 10,000 death imprints around him. His death qi surged out in all directions and carried everything away. People who were in the way all died instantly. His death qi was horrifyingly powerful. Those who were still alive were terrified when they saw all those people die instantly. Lin Feng slowly stood up. His black robe fluttered in the wind. At that moment, it seemed like the world belonged to him. He jumped forwards and the ground trembled. After a short time, he came back to the top of the mountain. Only countless corpses left all around him. However, nothing stopped. People continued coming in from the distance. 3 months later, on and around the mountain, it smelled like death. So many people had died there. Half a year later, around the mountain, no grass could grow anymore. There was only death qi. 10 months later, at the top of the mountain, everything was dead. People who were a bit weak could not even get close or they died because of the death qi. People who were strong couldn't come in either, because the death qi was too powerful. That place became a forbidden area. Nobody dared come there anymore. Most people were now getting ready to go back to hell. People gathered there and looked in the direction of the forbidden mountain. "I've heard that a terrifyingly strong cultivator of the top of the Huangqi layer is there, and that nobody can go there because nobody can withstand a single attack. There are endless corpses there, and they have already turned into a mountain. I've heard that he's from the other side. He looks like a conquering hero. Nobody can get close to him or they die. He must have a terrifying death-type item if his death energy is powerful. How could an emperor be that strong?" said someone. "You can go and check," said someone mockingly. The forbidden area had become legendary. Thankfully, the passage of the celestial country was going to open again. The terrifying amount of death intent disappeared abruptly. The crowd was stupefied. What was going on? The forbidden area had disappeared? The death intent has been recalled. When the crowd saw the death qi disappear, their hearts started pounding. They shot forwards, however. As they moved forwards, mountains of corpses appeared in front of them. The corpses were intact, but the people were dead. "They probably all have incredible treasures," whispered the crowd, trembling. Who had done this? Finally, the death qi completely disappeared. They could see someone at the top of a mountain. There were still pale death lights around him. His death chi could still kill people. That death chi has reached the peak of perfection at that cultivation level, someone pointed out. For an emperor, such a terrifying Tao is incredible. Indeed, no wonder he killed so many people. If we fought against him, we'd die. Everybody was afraid of Lin Feng. There was a holy spirit in front of Lin Feng, and he looked satisfied. This is a great holy spirit. It's strong and can use the strength of the earth and sky. It's much better than ordinary great imperial weapons. Back then, the Holy Spirit dynasty's Saint could form 33,000 small holy spirits and 137 great holy spirits. It was probably terrifying to see that, mused Lin Feng. He waved his hands and the Holy Spirit disappeared. At the same time, he stood up and glanced around. The passage to hell was going to open soon. Lin Feng headed towards the crowd. People moved aside and let him pass without attacking him. He was like a death god at this time. They didn't dare offend him. He was from the other side, but the question was, how did he control death strength so well? His death strength had reached the peak of perfection. Was he going to hell? When Lin Feng was finally far away, people went insane and started looting the corpses. They all had incredible precious treasures on them. However, Lin Feng didn't care about them. He was the first emperor of the continent of the 9 clouds. He had become member in a shrine. The other shrines had oppressed him. He had gone through so much. What he needed now was real strength. He stood at the exit. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Nobody dared get close. He had killed too many people already. Some people hadn't even gotten close to him, and had died anyway. He was glaring like a tiger eyeing its prey. The people from hell didn't provoke him. A few people unwisely got angry and felt humiliated. They approached him, but died instantly. What kind of a monster is that? People sighed. How terrifying. Everybody wanted to get far away from Lin Feng. Lin Feng was calmly waiting to go back to hell. When the passage opened, Lin Feng turned into a beam of light and went back through. He appeared in a gigantic valley, but he continued moving at top speed. Very quickly, he appeared at the top of a mountain and stopped. He took a deep breath and put on his illusionary cloak. Instantly his chi, face and body changed. Hell! Lin Feng flew in the direction of the great imperial Song City. Chapter 22-22. Resuscitation at the great imperial Song City. Outside of the gates, people were always fighting. Those who managed to win 100 battles were considered heroes and could get inside. They were then allowed to become members of the inner part of the city, where they obtained more resources to practice. The battle stage at the gate of the city outside was a symbol. Of course, winning 100 times wasn't easy. 2 people were seated in the bleachers and watching the battles. Not far from them, 2 people were looking at them respectfully, because they were ministers who controlled a part of hell. One of them was Minister Kalasutra. Next to Minister Kalasutra was his daughter Qin Yao. Qin Yao was already a high-level emperor, looking valiant and heroic. Her chi was extraordinary. She didn't look as proud as in the past, and seemed even more beautiful that way. Do you think some people can compete with you on the battle stage of the high-level emperors? Asked Minister Kalasutra, smiling at Qin Yao. Maybe, replied Qin Yao, nodding. However, she looked absent-minded and preoccupied. Her father had been busy, and had come back to spend some time with her and watch battles. She didn't know why, but she kept thinking about that man. Back then, when he was only a low-level emperor, he had won 100 times. She had thought she was strong, but after a short time, she had realized he was so strong that she couldn't catch up with him anymore. The distance between them had continued increasing. If he hadn't been there, she would have died in the battlefield of the celestial country. What are you thinking about? Asked Minister Kalasutra, when he saw that his daughter looked preoccupied. Father, do you remember Minister Uptala and Qing Qing? Asked Qin Yao. Minister Kalasutra was surprised and nodded. Of course I do. Poor Uptala. Qin Yao. Wang Xiao doesn't want people to talk about them anymore, so don't. I know. But back then Lin Feng didn't die. How strong is he now? Qin Yao wondered calmly. Minister Uptala was surprised. Back then, Minister Uptala had turned into a blue Uptala lotus to protect Lin Feng and Qing Qing. Lin Feng was really strong. Qin Yao had told him about the battles in the celestial country. Lin Feng was terrifyingly strong. At the same cultivation level, few people could compete with him. Besides, he had incredible comprehensive abilities, murmured Minister Calisutra. He remembered Lin Feng perfectly. In a room not far from the city, in front of Lin Feng was a blue Uptala lotus with a dimly discernible qi. It contained the strength of the 10,000 things of creation. Inside the blue Uptala lotus was a frozen young woman. She looked beautiful and pure. Lin Feng was holding 2 small bottles which contained some life qi. But the bottles were firmly closed, so no qi came out of them. "Qing Qing," said Lin Feng looking at the frozen young woman. He waved his hands and released fire and life strength. Ice began to break and snap. Fire containing life strength filled the air as the ice melted rapidly. Qing Qing's body appeared quickly. "Life," said Lin Feng. Life strength penetrated into her body. At the same time, he broke a bottle and poured a drop on Qing Qing's body. Her body absorbed the medicine. Beautiful pure lights quickly surrounded her body. Godly medicine of the immortals. Even though Lin Feng knew that Qing Qing was going to be fine, he was nervous. Lights surrounded her as the strength penetrated into her body thoroughly. Even if she had only one last thread of consciousness left, that medicine would heal her. So Qing Qing was going to be fine. Lights and qi floated around her. Very quickly, her cheeks became pink again. When Lin Feng saw that, he smiled. She was going to be fine. Then, he broke the other bottle and poured medicine on the blue Uptala lotus on which Qing Qing was laying. The same thing happened, life strength surging out to surround the flower. Lin Feng stood there a bit nervous. Qing Qing's hair bristled, and Lin Feng shivered. She slowly opened her beautiful eyes, looking confused. Wasn't she dead? She looked pure, innocent and beautiful. When she saw Lin Feng, she shivered. "Lin Feng," she said. She looked confused. "Am I dreaming?" Lin Feng shook his head, bent down and smiled broadly. "Qing Qing, you're fine now. Have you completely recovered?" Qing Qing moved. Life qi filled the air. She felt fine. After that, she looked at the blue Uptala lotus on which she was sitting. "That's my father's qi." She suddenly looked scared and her cheeks became white again. "Lin Feng is my father. He will recover too. I gave him godly medicine of the immortals as well," replied Lin Feng. Qing Qing was astonished. Godly medicine of the immortals? She got up and caressed the blue Uptala lotus. Her eyes twinkled. A silhouette was gradually appearing around the blue Uptala lotus. "Qing Qing," an ethereal voice spoke out. Qing Qing's heart started pounding. She looked at the silhouette and said, "Father, I thought I'd never seen you again." "Thank you very much, Lin Feng," said Minister Uptala looking at Lin Feng. "I'll never be able to pay you back for the medicine you gave Qing Qing and me." Qing Qing was astonished. Her father was Minister Uptala. He was a celestial emperor, and he was saying he couldn't pay Lin Feng back for that medicine? It meant that Lin Feng had paid a terrifying price to save her father and her. She felt as if she had died and come back to life. However, Lin Feng had saved her. She had recovered, and so had her father. "Uncle Uptala, how could you compare your lives and something material? Material can be bought. A life can't," Lin Feng smiled. "Besides, nothing would have ever happened to you if I hadn't been there. It was my fault. I had to do something for you. How could I blame you?" replied Minister Uptala, shaking his head. His silhouette became more and more real. In contrast, the blue Uptala lotus slowly became illusionary. "Lin Feng, where are we?" asked Minister Uptala. "Great Imperial Song City," said Lin Feng. Minister Uptala and Qing Qing were astonished. "Great Imperial Song City? Wang Xiao won't let us off." "Several years have passed. I came back for Wang Xiao," said Lin Feng coldly. Murder appeared in his eyes. Minister Uptala shook his head. "Lin Feng, you're talented and you were lucky to obtain godly medicine. But you're not a great emperor yet. You can't defeat Wang Xiao, it's impossible. Besides, he's a high official's descendant. You will not have any opportunity to kill him." "No," said Lin Feng shaking his head. "Uncle Uptala, I came to hell to kill Wang Xiao, and then I'll leave. I want to travel around the world. And regarding the way I intend to kill him, I have a plan. I won't stop you then. If you need anything, you can tell me," said Minister Uptala. Yes, Uncle Uptala. What do you intend to do? Asked Lin Feng. I'll see if I can find my former army. I can become an official minister in another city. I don't need to stay in the great imperial Song city, replied Minister Uptala. Lin Feng nodded. He had come to hell to help Minister Uptala and to avenge them. Then, he'd travel the world and become a great emperor. After that, he'd have more things to do. Snow Clan Moon Palace shrines. Lin Feng, Minister Uptala, and Qing Qing chatted for a long time. They had both fully recovered. Lin Feng didn't need to worry about them. Lin Feng put on his illusionary plaited bamboo hat and a cloak again. His chi and face changed again. He headed towards the great imperial Song city. Outside of the city, there was the same ocean of people as before. Great Emperor Song liked battles, so it influenced people from the great imperial Song city. There were always people fighting on the battle stage. Qin Yao didn't look that excited anymore. She looked at Minister Kalasutra and said, Father, let's go back. Why? Don't you want to watch battles anymore? One last fight and we'll go back, said Minister Kalasutra, smiling and shaking his head. At that moment, someone slowly walked onto the high-level Emperor's battle stage. His skin was really white, and it wasn't easy to see his facial features, because he had his head lowered. He had a strange chi. Minister Kalasutra looked at him, his eyes twinkled. That guy must be extremely strong. Qin Yao looked at her father's eyes. Why did her father think that? The young man's opponent was a cruel middle-aged man. At that moment, he had already won 23 battles. When he saw the young man, he shouted, You want to die? Before charging to the attack. The pale young man suddenly raised his head. Pitch-black death lights shot towards his opponent. In an instant, the middle-aged man was petrified. He couldn't move anymore, and he started trembling. Get down, said the young man coldly. His opponent's face was as gray as death. He didn't say anything, and jumped off the battle stage. His legs were still shaking. He had the searing impression the young man could have killed him like a fly. Chapter 22-23. 100 victories. The crowd was astonished when they saw the battle. Initially, Minister Kalasutra and Qin Yao wanted to leave, but suddenly, they were excited. Father, you were right. That guy is extremely strong, exclaimed Qin Yao, staring at the young man on the battle stage. Even though she didn't consider herself quite strong, she could have defeated the middle-aged man with the 23 victories too. However, that young man had defeated him easily. He hadn't even need to move. The challengers understood that as well. Therefore, after the young man won his first battle, nobody challenged him for a while. The young man was naturally Lin Feng. At that moment, he didn't know where Wang Xiao was, so he had to be admitted into the city by winning 100 times. Someone else finally walked onto the battle stage. That person looked at Lin Feng, whose eyes were closed, so he became angry. Lin Feng disdained the other fighters. Please, let's exchange views on cultivation, said that person coldly. Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes. Pitch-black death intent moved into his opponent's eyes. That person's life was quickly corroded, and he started hallucinating. He could really die. He understood why the previous fighter had left the battle stage willingly. Get down, said Lin Feng. His opponent looked glum, but Lin Feng's death voice resonated in his skull. He turned around and left the battle stage, just like the previous fighter. Phew! Many people in the crowd swallowed and took deep breaths. What a strange and mysterious fighter. One glance, a few words, and people left the battle stage willingly. The same thing happened during the third battle. But some extremely strong cultivators wanted to try. Mostly because Lin Feng didn't resort to terrifying and explosive attacks to fight. So how did he win so easily? However, his method worked, and his number of victories increased quickly. His death Dao has already reached a certain level. It might be extremely powerful even, said Minister Kalasutra as he watched Lin Feng. Because of Lin Feng they hadn't left. 28 victories already and people keep losing because of a single glance? Qin Yao's face stiffened. She was extremely strong, and she had hellfire. Her attacks were explosive, and she also understood Dao intent. But this guy seemed to be so strong, as if they were not even worth mentioning in the same sentence. Emo Shang is going on to the battle stage. Emo Shang is extremely strong. and his death Dao is formidable. This battle is going to be brilliant. Emo Shang. When Qin Yao saw Emo Shang, she shook her head. Emo Shang was only as strong as her. Even if he was extremely strong, he couldn't defeat that young man. But he probably wouldn't be defeated by a simple glance either. Your death Dao is not bad, said Emo Shang, staring at Lin Feng. I also control death Dao. Therefore, let's fight. Your death Dao is useless against me. After that, suddenly terrifying death lights emerged from Lin Feng's eyes and bombarded Emo Shang's eyes. Emo Shang's soul started trembling. He sensed death intent penetrate into his body, and his face turned gray. Lin Feng jumped forwards and landed in front of Emo Shang, staring at him. Ah! Emo Shang shrieked, and fell down backwards onto his arse. He was terrified. When the crowd saw that, they swallowed. Emo Shang pulled a long face. He didn't dare look at Lin Feng again. He turned around, crawled to the edge of the battle stage, and jumped off it. I underestimated him. He's much stronger than I thought, said Minister Kalasutra, quietly astonished. His death Dao has already reached the top of the first phase in terms of Dao strength. Among cultivators at the very top of the Huangqi layer, people who don't have a very advanced understanding of Dao strength can't compete with him. Yes, agreed Qin Yao. She remembered someone, especially the last time she had seen him. He looked like a death god, and he could release rivers made of death energy, which could sweep anything away. He had killed so many people. Back then, even high-level emperors couldn't withstand a single attack from him. And now on the battle stage, there was a guy whose death Dao was equally terrifying. He didn't even need to move to defeat his opponents. He could even kill them easily if he wanted. The fights continued. 50, 60, 90 victories, from the beginning to the end. The young man hadn't needed to fight at all. He glanced at his opponents and defeated them. The crowd was astonished. Some extremely strong cultivators came out of the great imperial Song city. That's Minister Inuo and Minister Azura. Minister Azura is an assassin and a demon king. He's one of the most terrifying ministers of the great imperial Song city. What is he doing here? When the crowd saw the ministers, they were startled, and their hearts started pounding. The young man on the battle stage was too strong, so he had drawn the attention of those people. Many people had won 100 battles, and those ministers had never come out because of that. Maybe there weren't too many emperors who were so strong in hell. Minister Azura released blood chi, his hair turning red. Similar to the man on the stage, he could also look at people, and at first glance he could defeat people. At that moment, he was standing there with his hands clasped behind his back, calmly watching the fights. There were several other ministers next to him, all of them terrifyingly strong. Minister Kalasutra was surprised. What were those guys doing here? Lin Feng couldn't help but glance at the bleachers. He smiled coldly on the inside. He didn't mind drawing some attention, because after killing Wang Xiao, he'd try to leave hell through the great imperial Song city. The celestial country's passage was already closed. Without using special spells or power, he'd need to wait for another year to leave. If he did wait, then he would have wasted 2 years stupidly. He had just come to hell to kill Wang Xiao and help Minister Uptala. It would have repercussions, but he'd be able to solve all those problems later after becoming extremely strong. The fights ended quickly each time. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng had won 97 battles. Nobody could defeat him. Avicii you go, ordered Minister Azura indifferently. Someone jumped onto the battle stage and instantly released a terrifying death blood chi. From his expression, one had the impression he could kill Lin Feng easily. That's Avicii, he's Minister Azura's disciple. He's very talented, and will replace Minister Azura in the future. Avicii? I've heard that he almost passed the exam of the Hell Shrine. He's really strong. He controls Avicii Hell Dao. He can drive people into the abysses of the Avicii and kill them. Lin Feng glanced his opponent, a strong cultivator this time. Surprisingly, Avicii is getting involved. That guy's victory spree is going to come to an end, even if he's extremely strong. Even though the crowd found Lin Feng terrifying, they knew that Avicii had almost become a member of a shrine. He was extremely strong. Probably only a few emperors in the great imperial Song city could compete with him. Avicii was staring at Lin Feng. A terrifying amount of Dao intent drove towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng had the impression he was falling into a terrifying and sanguinary cage of hell. The Dao power tried to pierce through his skin. Lin Feng was surprised. He released death imprints around himself and took some steps forwards. His eyes were still filled with death strength, and he was staring at his opponent. "Die!" shouted Avicii coldly. Avicii's red Avicii hell strength turned into terrifying energies, which shook Lin Feng's soul. However, Lin Feng just grunted coldly, and millions of threads of death strength appeared around him. They turned into a black death dragon and shot towards his opponent. Avicii grunted coldly and continued releasing energies. He formed a cross with his hands, and a red cross appeared in front of him. Thunder rumbled, the earth and sky trembled. It was a terrifying collision. How strong! But Avicii will win. The crowd believed. However, they saw Lin Feng punch out, and the red energies were cut in two. Lin Feng jumped into the newly created path. Death strength moved towards his opponent. Avicii also jumped into his own red energies. When he saw Lin Feng's death energies surging towards him, the path Lin Feng had opened turned into an Avicii hell again. "Piss off," said Lin Feng coldly. Millions of death strength lights kept appearing. Avicii moved both hands continuously. Red crosses kept blocking off the death strength. The death strength pierced through. Lin Feng continued walking forwards and punched out, explosion detonating. Avicii sensed a terrifying amount of strength moving towards him and retreated quickly. However, the death strength was already surrounding him. His face stiffened. "I lost." The red lights disappeared. Avicii jumped off the battle stage without even turning his head around. The crowd was astonished. This new guy was terrifyingly strong. Nobody knew who he was, and someone as strong as Avicii couldn't even compete with him. It seemed like this guy was even much stronger than Avicii, as if they belonged to different worlds. Lin Feng won 100 battles easily. In the bleachers, someone Lin Feng knew had appeared, Wang Xiao. He had heard that Avicii had been defeated, so he had decided to come and see this new fighter. Chapter 22-24. Killing Wang Xiao. Minister Azura studied Lin Feng calmly, but inside he was astonished. This guy was terrifyingly strong, and his Dao power was astonishing. Maybe it hadn't only reached the first phase, maybe it had already reached its peak. He was only an emperor, and his Dao power was so terrifying. How strong would it be if he became a great emperor? There were several ministers in the bleachers already. They were all amazed. Lin Feng was extremely talented. "What's your name?" Minister Azura asked. "Lin Feng." "Lin Feng." When Minister Kalasutra, Qin Yao and the others heard that, they were astonished, and Wang Xiao looked at him coldly. But then he controlled himself. This couldn't be the Lin Feng he knew. They had a different chi and a different face. They were completely different. "It's not him," thought Qin Yao a touch sadly. "Lin Feng, are you interested in joining the Azura army? I can recruit you as a disciple," said Minister Azura to Lin Feng calmly. Everybody was impressed. Minister Azura was one of the strongest ministers of the great imperial Song City, and he wanted to recruit Lin Feng as a disciple. It meant Lin Feng was extremely strong and talented. Lin Feng was more than strong enough to join the Azura army. "Minister, is there a way to go to the continent of the 9 clouds from the inner part of the great imperial Song City?" asked Lin Feng calmly. Minister Azura's social position was higher than Wang Zhao's. Minister Azura was surprised. "Continent of the 9 clouds? Who is this guy?" "What do you mean?" asked Minister Azura. He frowned. "Nothing. I already have a teacher, and I'm not interested in going to the great imperial Song City. I came here because I was looking for Wang Xiao," said Lin Feng, looking at Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao was astonished and his expression became weird. This guy was called Lin Feng and he had come for him? "Someone whose name is the same as me is looking for you. If you want to see him, you can come with me," said Lin Feng calmly. Then he turned around and started walking away. He wasn't interested in going to the great imperial Song City at all. Wang Zhao's face stiffened. Someone who had the same name as him was looking for him? Qin Yao and Minister Kalasutra's face was also funny. Was that Lin Feng? "Have the army come with me," said Wang Xiao to someone telepathically, as he followed after Lin Feng. Was an emperor trying to deceive him? Lin Feng, you killed my son Wang Zhua, and you dared come back? You really want to die, said Wang Xiao coldly. Minister Uptala had turned into a blue Uptala lotus, been injured, and then Lin Feng had taken him away. Wang Xiao had looked for Lin Feng everywhere, but hadn't found him. Now surprisingly Lin Feng was back. Let's follow and watch, said Minister Kalasutra to Qin Yao, and they trailed after Lin Feng. Minister Azura was interested and also followed. A whole group of people ended up following Lin Feng. Let's go, said many people curious now. Lin Feng had come back for Wang Xiao. What did he want? Lin Feng didn't walk too far and stopped to enter a courtyard. Wang Xiao stopped in the air and stared at Lin Feng. After a few minutes, the door creaked and a few people came out. Wang Xiao was stunned. How is this possible? Said Wang Xiao coldly. He couldn't believe it his eyes. Those people were dead. How was this possible? Uptala, said Wang Xiao coldly. Minister Uptala had transformed into a blue Uptala lotus. That change was irreversible. How could he be standing here now? Finally, Wang Xiao looked at Lin Feng coldly and said, Was it you a moment before? Wang Xiao, welcome to Fortune City, said Lin Feng with a smile. An illusion appeared and turned into a vast castle. The illusion surrounded Wang Xiao and the others. This is Empty Space Castle. Wang Xiao was staring at the empty space castle. Fortune City? Wang Xiao wasn't the only one who was astonished. Minister Uptala and Qing Qing's hearts were pounding too. That Fortune City was a precious item? What was going on? They had come back to life thanks to godly medicine of the immortals. Then Lin Feng had changed his face and qi. And now he could summon Fortune City's empty space castles? Was this a terrifying great imperial weapon? In the outside world, Minister Kalasutra and the others arrived just behind them. However, they just saw an illusionary empty space. It was a deployment spell. What a formidable illusion item. What's going on inside? Who's in there? Minister Azura arrived and was astonished too. He was worried for Wang Xiao. Not long after, an army arrived. The leader of the group was astonished when he saw that, and said to Minister Azura, Minister Azura, should we attack? Minister Azura glanced at them and said nothing. He didn't like Wang Xiao. Even though Wang Xiao was an heir in the great imperial Song City, Minister Azura didn't have anything to do with that. If Wang Xiao died, it wasn't Minister Azura's problem. That Lin Feng had dared take Wang Xiao inside there, and had a terrifying treasure. He wasn't ordinary. Let's go, said the leader of the army when he saw that Minister Azura didn't ask them to attack. They released their energies and attacked the illusion. However, it was useless, they were way too weak. Besides, they couldn't see anything. Everything they saw in the illusion was fake. Within the little Fortune City, Lin Feng faced Minister Uptala and said, Uncle Uptala, this small Fortune City can only be broken by Saint Emperors. Nobody will disturb us here. This small Fortune City was like the plated bamboo hat and the cloak. The diviner had given it to him. It was a powerful item Lin Feng could use to protect himself. People from outside didn't know what it was. Of course, if they knew what was inside, it wouldn't matter either. As the champion of the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds, it was normal that Lin Feng had received such items. Uncle Uptala, we can kill that guy, right? Said Lin Feng to Minister Uptala. Wang Xiao had been injured by Minister Uptala's blue Uptala lotus back in the day. And even though a great deal of time had passed, he hadn't really progressed. He was still weaker than before. Minister Uptala nodded and slowly walked forwards. Uptala Dao filled the air. Cosmic energies intertwined. In his hands, blue Uptala lotuses appeared. Don't kill him completely. Leave him one last thread of qi, Lin Feng said coldly. Wang Xiao pulled a long face. He also released a terrifying qi. At this moment, it wasn't time to ask them how they had survived. It was time to fight. Their battle was as explosive as Lin Feng had expected. Wang Xiao hadn't progressed, and had actually become weaker. He could only rely on soul strength. Lin Feng released qi to protect Qing Qing. Even though Wang Xiao had become weaker, he could easily kill Qing Qing. Lin Feng had to shield her. Lin Feng also released the qi of the 10,000 things of creation. They intertwined and death qi appeared inside. The qi of the 10,000 things of creation completely turned into death. Millions of blue Uptala lotuses appeared and turned into sharp weapons. They all shot towards Wang Zhao's soul. His face turned deathly pale. His eyes were filled with murder. How could he die now? Lin Feng, swore Wang Zhao coldly. Minister Uptala and Qing Qing had come back to life. He had saved them. And he had this Fortune City item. Die! Wang Zhao released strength, bombarding Uptala and forcing him back before he shot towards Lin Feng. Die! Shouted Wang Zhao explosively. Terrifying cosmic energies streaked across the sky after Lin Feng. Lin Feng released a death sword and destroyed the attack. A terrifying amount of death strength roared out from him. Millions of threads of death strength turned into sharp death spears, which shot towards Wang Zhao. How is this possible? Wang Zhao's expression changed drastically. What a powerful attack! How could a mere emperor carry out such a terrifying attack? Lin Feng's death strength could threaten him. Sleep, said Lin Feng. Suddenly, his cosmic energies changed and turned into dream of life cosmic energies. Wang Zhao suddenly felt drowsy. The death strength also turned into terrifying dragons biting for him. Piss off, shouted Wang Zhao furiously. He came back to his senses and released as much strength as he could. Rumbling sounds spread in the air. The spears broke apart. However, Wang Zhao felt weak. And right then a blue Uptala lotus penetrated into his body and bombarded his inner strength. Chapter 22-25. Qin Shan's appearance. The terrifying power of the lotus attacked Wang Zhao's inner body. He went insane. Arg! Wang Zhao shouted furiously. He desperately released his soul strength at Lin Feng. Lin Feng's face was sharp. Death strength emerged from his third eye, and his energies exploded in front of him as he retreated. Even though Wang Zhao had become weaker, he was still a celestial emperor. Even if he had regressed to an ordinary celestial emperor, he was still quite strong. And as long as he had a thread of soul strength left, he could still attack Lin Feng. Lin Feng resisted. Wang Zhao was doomed anyway. Minister Uptala slapped Wang Zhao's head, and more blue Uptala lotus lights penetrated into his body. At the same time, a gigantic blue Uptala lotus turned into a cage and surrounded Wang Zhao. His soul strength weakened swiftly. Lin Feng! Shouted Wang Zhao furiously. He hated Lin Feng. He had to kill him. Wang Zhao! Shouted Minister Uptala coldly. Another blue Uptala lotus flashed into him and attacked his soul, weakening it further. Lin Feng slowly walked forwards, his eyes filled with death strength, and staring at Wang Zhao. When Wang Zhao saw Lin Feng's eyes, he was finally terrified and desperate. I'm an imperial descendant of great imperial Song City. Will you dare kill me in front of everyone? Demanded Wang Zhao coldly. He was trying to scare them, of course. Lin Feng and Minister Uptala both ignored him. They continued walking forwards and releasing ice-cold qi. Wang Zhao was trembling in front of them. If you want to die without suffering, tell me who can take me to the continent of the 9 clouds from the great imperial Song City, said Lin Feng coldly. I'll take you there, replied Wang Zhao. Lin Feng released a terrifying demon fire, which contained an ice-cold yin qi. Back in the day, Wang Zhao had captured Qing Qing to threaten Minister Uptala and put some destructive energies in Qing Qing's body. If Minister Uptala hadn't transformed into a blue Uptala lotus, Qing Qing would have died, and Lin Feng as well. Minister Uptala had saved them both. Now they were safe and sound after Lin Feng gave them some godly medicine of the immortals. Otherwise, they would have died a long time ago. Lin Feng released terrifying demon fire strength, which moved towards the imprisoned Wang Zhao. He shrieked horribly. His soul was injured and had started burning. It was extremely painful. You think I'll let you live? Said Lin Feng coldly. Don't worry. I won't destroy your soul that quickly. If you tell me the truth, I will kill you without torturing you. However, if you lie, I'll never destroy your soul and I'll torture you forever. An ice-cold wind brushed against Wang Zhao's body, caused by Lin Feng's voice. Wang Zhao was already suffering too much, and he said, You need to find someone who can control an altar. There is a path which leads to the continent of the 9 clouds in the great imperial Song City. The high priest can do it. He is the second most powerful person after great Emperor Song, and controls the school of Hades. But they almost never use it because people who know about the continent of the nine clouds are extremely strong, talented, and usually they are great Emperor Song's descendants. The others have to rely on themselves by passing the challenge of the celestial country. When Lin Feng heard that, he recalled his fire and looked at Minister Uptala. Minister Uptala nodded and said, "The High Priest really has incredible privileges in the great Imperial Song City." "What is the High Priest's cultivation level?" Lin Feng asked Wang Xiao coldly. "Many years ago, he was already at the very top of the Shengdi layer. I don't know whether he has already broken through or not," replied Wang Xiao numbly. Hell was an independent world. It had been created by some terrifyingly strong cultivators in the ancient past. It wasn't connected to the continent of the nine clouds, and had changed a lot with time. People from the continent of the nine clouds don't really know about Hell, and people from Hell didn't really know the continent of the nine clouds existed. With the imperial court of the continent of the nine clouds, that was like 3 different worlds. Hell consisted of 10 worlds and a countless number of minor hells. Those hells were all controlled by the 10 cities, which meant that Hell was in the hands of the 10 Yama court's kings. Those people had to be terrifyingly strong. They were probably saint emperors at least, or maybe even saints. Since the high priest's position was just under one of the 10 Yama court's kings, he had to be extremely strong. Lin Feng, the strongest ministers of the great imperial Song City, are saint emperors at the top of the Shengdi layer. They are terrifyingly strong. Minister Azura is one of the 3 ministers. His strength is enigmatic and unfathomable. The high priest is the leader of all the ministers. He's stronger than saint emperors, but he probably isn't a sage yet, said Minister Uptala. Lin Feng probably couldn't ask the high priest to help him then. It would be too dangerous. Almost a saint, whispered Lin Feng. Then he looked at Minister Uptala. Uncle Uptala, do you want to come to the continent of the nine clouds with me? Or do you want to gather your army and go to another city? If Minister Uptala and Qing Qing stayed in Hell, they'd be able to have a normal life in another city. Therefore, Lin Feng couldn't be sure without asking. I don't intend to leave Hell for now. I just came back to life. I want to travel around and go to several hells. I want to become a saint emperor, and then I'll go and see the outside world, replied Minister Uptala. He looked at Qing Qing and asked, Qing Qing, do you want to stay with me or travel with Lin Feng? When Qing Qing heard Minister Uptala, she blushed and lowered her head. She remained silent. Then, she raised her head again, looked at Lin Feng and smiled. I'll stay with my father. Lin Feng, will you really go to the continent? Yes, nodded Lin Feng. Since Minister Uptala and Qing Qing had decided to do that, he could only wish them good luck. Uncle Uptala, Qing Qing, one of my masters will go to the great imperial Song City. He'll tell them not to do anything to you. I'm convinced great Emperor Song will give him face, Lin Feng said calmly. Wang Xiao was just a descendant of great Emperor Song, and didn't even progress anymore. Great Emperor Song wouldn't get angry because of someone like Wang Xiao. All right, Qing Qing nodded. Lin Feng looked at Wang Xiao and said, Is the high priest in great imperial Song City now? I guess so, Wang Xiao nodded. Lin Feng, we don't need him anymore, said Minister Uptala calmly. Lin Feng nodded and sat down cross-legged as Minister Uptala destroyed Wang Xiao's soul. Minister Uptala watched Lin Feng. A strange qi emerged from Lin Feng's body and surrounded him. After a short time, the qi slowly dispersed. Lin Feng disappeared, and a terrifying giant appeared instead. How strong! Minister Uptala started trembling. This qi was terrifying. Was this Lin Feng's master? Where was Lin Feng? What a man! Thought Minister Uptala. No wonder he had obtained godly medicine of the immortals, and he had the Fortune City item. Lin Feng was incredible. Qin Shan stood up and waved his hand. The small Fortune City disappeared. Minister Uptala was astonished. What was going on? Wasn't the Fortune City item Lin Feng's? Why could this giant use it too? At the same time, there were many people gathered outside. When they saw Qin Shan, they were shocked. What a terrifying giant. One glance is unbearable. Minister Azura was astonished. That was a saint's qi. Are you Minister Azura? Lin Feng asked Minister Azura calmly. His voice sounded extremely deep, and made the earth and sky shake. Minister Azura was intimidated and quickly replied, "Indeed, Master." "Master, Minister Azura is calling that guy Master? How terrifying." "A saint. A saint is in the great imperial Song City." Minister Kalasutra and Qin Yao were astonished. Where was Lin Feng? Lin Feng had disappeared. Minister Uptala and Qing Qing had come back to life. And now a saint was here. Chapter 22-26. Back to the small world. Qin Shan looked at Minister Azura and said, "I killed Wang Xiao. Bring me to the high priest." Minister Azura was astounded. This giant wanted to see the high priest? Minister Azura was one of the strongest ministers of the great imperial Song City, and he could indeed go and see the high priest. He didn't really care about Wang Xiao's death. "I guess you had your reasons to kill Wang Xiao, Master. However, why do you want to meet the high priest, Master?" asked Minister Azura. "Of course Wang Xiao had to die. Just bring me to the high priest. You don't need to know anything else. Also Uptala, his daughter, and my disciple are connected. Don't do anything to them," said Qin Shan calmly. Minister Azura nodded. "I understand. The great imperial Song City will not do anything to Minister Uptala and his daughter. Please come with me to the great imperial Song City, Master." Wherever a saint appeared in the cultivation world, people were terrified. It was something too astonishing. Saints, or sages as they were sometimes called, could scare anyone to death. One simple sentence and people could collapse. How could the great imperial Song City dare harm Minister Uptala and his daughter if a saint protected them? Nobody cared about Wang Xiao, especially if a saint had killed him. The saint turned around and looked at Minister Uptala and Qing Qing. They heard Uncle Uptala. "Qing Qing, I hope we'll meet again." Qin Shan turned around again and followed Minister Azura. They both left. Minister Uptala and Qing Qing were trembling. That was Lin Feng's voice. They watched him leave with mixed feelings. Lin Feng was following Minister Azura and was going to leave hell. Would he ever come back? Minister Kalasutra and Qin Yao also watched them leave. They were wondering whether Lin Feng had become a saint's disciple. "Uptala," Minister Kalasutra said to Minister Uptala, "I didn't think you'd come back to life. Even though we weren't really friends, I'm happy for you." Minister Uptala nodded. "It's all thanks to Lin Feng. Anyway, keep your distance from me." Minister Kalasutra understood Minister Uptala. They had just killed Wang Xiao. And even though the saint had said that the great imperial Song City couldn't touch them, Minister Kalasutra was different because he was still a minister of the great imperial Song City. It was better for Minister Kalasutra to avoid doing anything which could arouse suspicion. "I did not think that guy would become so strong so quickly. Even though he hasn't broken through to the Diqi layer yet, he can already defeat ordinary great emperors." Minister Kalasutra sighed. "I really wonder why you didn't leave with him. Everybody has different goals in life. He has his own life. Maybe we'll meet again, here or in another world," said Minister Uptala calmly. Both remained silent. The Celestial Country battlefield. There were many battles going on, and one battle was particularly explosive. One of the fighters was terrifying. "Ye, you do it," said a beautiful woman at that moment. If people from Chi Tian Holy Town had been there, they would have been astonished, because that girl was the ancient Jade Dynasty's holy woman. "All right," nodded Yi Quebec. He released deployment spell energies and captured some people. They just hurt them, they didn't kill them. "Lei Dong Tian, be careful when you attack," the Holy Jade Princess warned an insane fighter. Lei Dong Tian was extremely strong. However, his attacks were too explosive. People had to be far away from him when he fought. Lin Feng had turned them all into perfect puppets. Lei Dong Tian glanced at the Holy Jade Princess coldly. She was so talkative. If Lin Feng hadn't given them orders, Lei Dong Tian would have killed her already. She pissed him off all the time. Ji Jiang was also fighting. After having been captured by Lin Feng, he had started becoming stronger and stronger, and was progressing extremely quickly. However, in front of the other puppets, he was still too weak. As for what they were doing, Lin Feng had given them the demon puppet technique. They could turn other people into demon puppets as well. The battles were non-stop. People on the battlefield were not surprised, because battles never stopped in that place. Lei Dongtian, Yi Ke the Holy Jade Princess. All them were extremely strong, especially Lei Dongtian. He had hoped to finish in the top 10 of the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. Nobody on the celestial country's battlefield could compete with him. That small army kept fighting, and they kept growing stronger. As for Lin Feng, he had turned into Qin Shan, and was with the high priest of Great Imperial Song City. The high priest was skinny and looked like an ordinary dying old man. Only his eyes showed how dangerous he was. But he was very polite to Qin Shan. He brought Lin Feng to a palace. Lin Feng had the impression that palace was the real palace of Hades. When you cross the door of the lowest depths of hell, the 18th hell, you can exit hell, and you'll arrive in the continent of the 9 clouds. I'm not sure where you'll end up, however, said the high priest to Lin Feng. He looked at a flight of stairs. Lin Feng found the exit extremely mysterious. The priest didn't know where he would end up. Where am I going? Wondered Lin Feng. Qin Shan stepped on the flight of stairs, and his silhouette became blurry. After a short time, Lin Feng crossed the door. There was death-black water beyond. Without hesitation, Lin Feng jumped into it. He remembered when he had first come to hell from Jiuyu. He had jumped into black water as well. The black water rolled in low oily waves. The sound of splashing was a jarring intrusion. A silhouette appeared in Jiuyu's forbidden area, and came out of the black water. Lin Feng glanced around, smiling indifferently. Lin Feng took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm back. This is Jiuyu's forbidden area." Surprisingly, the exit in the Great Imperial Song City leads to the small world in which I used to live. Nobody dares come here. But for Qin Shan, how could it be a forbidden area? Lin Feng's silhouette flickered. He turned back into Lin Feng again. Qin Shan went back into his spirit world. Even when he controlled Qin Shan, he used his own strength in order not to tire out Qin Shan. He wanted Qin Shan to recover. There were some people outside of Jiuyu's forbidden area. They were stupefied when they saw a silhouette streaking across the sky. They wanted to say something, but when they looked at that cultivator, they stopped talking. That was a terrifying emperor. Was he from the 12 empires of Jiuyu? Was he one of the great emperors? Lin Feng didn't care about what those people were thinking. He glanced around and continued flying. Even though I took everything away from Shuiyu, there must be something new there, thought Lin Feng. Shuiyu's qi was great. The people suddenly disappeared from there. But there were probably new cultivators there. Actually, Lin Feng was right. New people had moved to Shuiyu, and it had become a country again. There was no leader though, people competed for power. Yangzhou City had become a great place to hunt for treasures. A Zoom cultivator protected Yangzhou City. People admired her. She was extremely strong and beautiful. Many people dreamt of being engaged in a relationship with her. However, people in Shuiyu could just dream about it. That woman was called Qing Ming Xian. Even though she was a woman, she was much stronger than men. At that moment, that woman was standing before a gigantic statue. She had spent a great deal of time making that statue. It was 3 zhang high. People had to raise their heads to look at it. That statue was the entrance of Yangzhou City. Chapter 22-27. Mortal life. After Lin Feng took everything away from Yangzhou City, many things had changed there. It was Shuiyu's center, so people came to Yangzhou City because it was interesting in terms of history. The gigantic statue was a statue of Lin Feng. There were still large streets and small lanes in Yangzhou City. Lin Feng was considered a hero there. Even though Qing Ming Xian had become a Zoom cultivator for a long time and was very strong, she wasn't proud. She knew that she was much weaker than that young man. Back in the day, they had both appeared on the battle stage of the great competition of Shuiyu. However, after that, she had realized how weak she was. "Lin Feng, where are you now and what is your cultivation level?" whispered Qing Ming Xian. She was staring at Lin Feng's statue. Many people were watching her. Many men were in love with her. In the past, she used to be sexy. Now she was just purely beautiful. At that moment in the distance, 2 silhouettes appeared. 1 man and 1 woman. The man looked extremely strong, and the woman looked beautiful. They got closer to the statue. "It doesn't look like him at all," sniffed the woman, looking over the statue. She didn't look satisfied. Not bad, the man smiled. What? No. It doesn't look like him. It's so bad, said the woman. Even though the statue looked lifelike, she wasn't satisfied. It was because that statue was Lin Feng the way he looked in the past. He had changed afterwards. The young man smiled. Actually, he didn't think the statue really looked like him. His chi was different. The best sculptor of the empire carved that statue, Master Yi. He's a Zun cultivator. He's extremely strong. And you dare criticize his statue, said someone when they heard those two. How disrespectful. How conceited, said someone else, staring at the two. The young man smiled thinly. People were similar everywhere in the cultivation world. Qingming Xian heard a sound. She turned around and saw the two of them. She was surprised. A strong wind blew, and Qingming Xian appeared in front of the man and the woman. She stared at them. Qingming Xian doesn't like them either, snickered the crowd when they saw that. But the young man and the young woman just smiled at Qingming Xian. They looked quite composed. You. Qingming Xian suddenly remembered so many things. Lin Feng and Tang Yu were back. On top of that, she couldn't see their cultivation level. Even though they were smiling, she understood those two were already very, very far ahead of her. Yu is my wife, smiled Lin Feng. Qingming Xian was astonished. She smiled and said, Congratulations. Thank you, replied Lin Feng. He said, I'm going to Yangzhou City to take a walk. All right, should I come with you? Asked Qingming Xian. No need. We're just taking a walk, said Lin Feng while shaking his head. Then they entered Yangzhou City. Qingming Xian turned and watched them. She took a deep breath. She was a Zun cultivator, but those two were. How strong were they? They already belonged to a different world. When the crowd saw that, they were astonished. Qingming Xian knew those two? No, that young man looked familiar, said someone. He looked way too familiar. I have the same feeling. As if I had just seen him, said someone else. Quickly, people looked at the statue. There. Someone swallowed and pointed at the statue. That was the common point. Many people then looked over at Qingming Xian. He's Lin Feng, said Qingming Xian. Those people had the impression their brains were going to explode. The one who had just talked was Lin Feng. They had just said his wife was talking nonsense. That extremely beautiful woman could criticize the statue if she wished. Master Yi was a nobody in front of them. According to legends, Shuiyu disappeared in just one day because of Lin Feng. And now he's back. Indeed, Lin Feng is too strong. I wonder what his cultivation level is now. The people sighed. The news spread quickly in Yangzhou City, and soon everybody knew that Lin Feng had come back. At that moment, Lin Feng and Tang Yu were still having a walk in Yangzhou City. They looked like ordinary pedestrians. Tang Yu was smiling. As expected, the Shuiyu you created is almost the same, but now it has started changing. Your Shuiyu is like it was in the past. Of course, my parents are there. They like to feel like at home. It's their hometown, said Lin Feng smiling. Someone who hadn't grown up in Shuiyu wouldn't be able to see the differences though. The people in Lin Feng's Shuiyu didn't know they were somewhere else. Why did you want to come here? Asked Tang Yu, holding Lin Feng's arm and smiling gently. I initially wanted to go back home with you. Isn't it a good thing? Replied Lin Feng with a smile. They spent some time in bars and restaurants. The news that Lin Feng had come back had already spread in Yangzhou City, and many people noticed them. However, the two simply rose up into the air. It's Lin Feng. It's really him, said someone when he saw them. Lin Feng. The crowd raised their heads. But Lin Feng and Tang Yu had turned into beams of light and disappeared. How fast? How strong? People ran after them. But after a few steps they stopped, unable to follow. What a pity, they wished they could have seen Lin Feng. After leaving Yangzhou City, they crossed the empire of Shuiyu and headed to Dragon Mountain to see Tang Yu's family. Tang Yi and Tang Rui were already quite strong and had their own lives. Lin Feng and Tang Yu came down in a courtyard and looked at the sunset. Behind them, Tang Yu's father looked at them and smiled kindly. He couldn't see how strong they were anymore. Unfortunately, his grandchild wasn't here. Tang Yu told him that he was going to become a holy emperor in a dynasty. But her father didn't know what a dynasty or a holy emperor were. He just thought that a dynasty was probably much stronger than an empire like Dragon Mountain. He couldn't imagine what a place like Chi Tian Holy Town looked like, just like Lin Feng in the past before he had left the small world. Lin Feng and Tang Yu didn't tell him too much. Telling him too much would just disturb their peaceful lives. Sister, when are you leaving with your husband? Stay here for a few days, all right? Said Tang Yi, who was lying down on another side. We'll leave in a few days. We'll come back more often in the future, replied Tang Yu. She knew that Lin Feng needed to become stronger and break through. They were traveling to become stronger. Lin Feng wanted to break through to the Diqi layer. I'll come with you, said Tang Rui. No, said Tang Yu, shaking her head. Tang Rui was growing up, but he continued acting like a kid. All right, but your husband will stay with me for a few days, said Tang Rui. All right, agreed Lin Feng whimsically. Spending a few days here and enjoying the peace and tranquility was a good thing. Chapter 22-28. Tribe's goddess. A couple was walking on the snow holding hands. The woman looked extremely pretty. She let go of the man's hand and ran on the snow laughing. She was so beautiful that the snow around her could have melted, just like the man's heart. That's Tianqi Snow Peak there. Is that where you studied back in the days? Tang Yu asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng gazed into the distance, smiled and nodded. In front of them was the city of Tianqi. Many people were walking towards the city, aiming to become Tianqi's disciples. Let's go and see, exclaimed Tang Yu, waiting for Lin Feng. She grabbed his hand again. Many people who wanted to become disciples of Tianqi were waiting at the foot of the snowy mountains. Many people looked at Lin Feng and Tang Yu, viewing them as competitors. Lin Feng and Tang Yu were talking in low voices. They immediately entered Tianqi, but some people came up to them quickly. You can't enter Tianqi. Lin Feng was still holding Tang Yu's hand and smiled gently. You can't follow. The two blurred into the wind and disappeared. Those people were astonished and spun around. The two people were already far away. The guard's heart started pounding. Those people had entered Tianqi without permission. What to do? He said we can't follow him. He's probably a strong cultivator from abroad. We can't disturb them. Let nature take its course. They don't look evil. A few disciples from Tianqi nodded agreement with those words. Lin Feng and Tang Yu arrived at the top of a snowy peak. Lin Feng remembered his time there. He was wondering how his Zun-level teachers were doing. These days, the main peak of Tianqi was Tianxian Snowy Peak. There were two leaders there. Tianqi Shui was at the top of a snowy peak. She sensed something and turned around. She suddenly looked astonished, and her eyes became dazzling. Lin Feng nodded and smiled at her. Tianqi Shui's mouth was wide open. She wanted to say something, but she was speechless. A strong wind started blowing, and both of them disappeared from her field of vision. Tianqi Shui's face stiffened. She gazed into the distance and saw Lin Feng already far in the distance. What is his current cultivation level? Wondered Tianqi Shui, still speechless. She didn't chase after him. Lin Feng and Tang Yu continued walking from peak to peak, enjoying the beautiful scenery, then continued flying. The Huangxi was still a stormy place, but Lin Feng and Tang Yu could travel freely there. Now and then, they passed a boat, and when the people aboard saw two figures flying across the Huangxi, they were stupefied. Lin Feng and Tang Yu had shaken the entire region of Bahuang, the northern part of Bahuang, the western part of Bahuang, the southern part of Bahuang, the central part of Bahuang. Lin Feng had already spent 5 months in the small world. He just rested there. Lin Feng and Tang Yu left the small world, crossing the passage between the small world and the dark night region. They crossed the desert, where many tribes still lived. They were all connected. Lin Feng arrived in a tribe walking on the warm yellow sand. People seemed extremely busy. Back then, Emperor Yu and he had come to this tribe and Mu Yin had taken care of them. Lin Feng knew the place. After a short time, he noticed that many people had gathered at the foot of a tree. The sunlight was scorching hot, so the people spent time in the shade. There was a beautiful woman in white clothes over there, looking busy. Someone was helping her put healing herbs in a cauldron. Of course, that woman could easily heal light injuries herself. A young man whose arm was wounded was seated next to Mu Yun as she healed his wounds. He smiled at Mu Yun and said, "Mu Yun, if I could get married to you, I'd be so happy." Mu Yun smiled at the young man. Someone next to them admonished him, "Aguta, Mu Yun is the most beautiful woman of all the tribes. She's nice, gentle, and generous. She's like a goddess to all the tribes. Why would she want to marry you? Aguta, you're not even a cultivator of the top of the Zunqi layer. Mu Yun is an emperor. How could you get married with such a goddess? If a great hero appeared in our tribe, he'd be able to get married to Mu Yun," said an old man in a solemn and respectful way. "I will become the hero of our tribes then." Aguta grinned. Mu Yun smiled gently, looking like a celestial being. It was the same thing every day. Young men told her such things. Every day, they kept saying they wanted to become heroes and get married to her. However, even if they did, would she want to get married to them? Lin Feng was standing in the distance. When he saw that beautiful woman, he smiled slightly. She had gone back to the tribe and hadn't left. Nothing had changed, she was just as beautiful as before. "Lin Feng, don't you like her?" Tang Yu asked Lin Feng. Her lips twitched as she stared at him. Lin Feng was staring at the woman and remained motionless. "I owe her a lot. She's both gentle and generous. Back then, she saved Emperor Yu and me," whispered Lin Feng. "I'm asking you if you like her?" asked Tang Yu. She looked like a little girl. Her eyes twinkled. Lin Feng was a pervert, and he liked many women. "A little bit," Lin Feng admitted. "But I came here just to see if she was all right." He caressed Yu's face gently. "As expected," said Tang Yu, pursing her lips. She continued, "If you really like her, take her with us. She seems like a good girl. She looks gentle and beautiful. You keep hurting women's feelings." Lin Feng looked surprised. He smiled wryly and said to Tang Yu, "Mengqing, Xeni, I still haven't solved their problems. We don't know what awaits us in the future. Before becoming stronger, I won't accept other women in my life. I already owe you and the others a lot. So someday, when you become a great emperor, you'll continue hurting women's feelings," said Tang Yu, pursing her lips, her eyes twinkling. What a guy. Lin Feng had cold sweats. "I'll hurt you first," said Lin Feng, grabbing Tang Yu's arms and laughing. Tang Yu said, "Go and see her. I'm waiting here." Lin Feng was surprised. "If she sees me, she'll be sad." Tang Yu smiled. She let go off Lin Feng and rose up into the air. As she left, she turned around and smiled back at him. Lin Feng grinned and shook his head before walking over to Mu Yun slowly. Mu Yun was focused on her patient. She didn't notice Lin Feng. After all, many people came to her every day. The others looked at Lin Feng. He looked like a scholar. He was different from the other young men, and probably wasn't from a tribe. "Help me," said Lin Feng, walking up to Mu Yun. "There are many people. You need to get in line," said Mu Yun, without looking at the one speaking. However, she sensed that he wasn't moving, and the voice sounded familiar too. She raised her head and looked at him. When she saw his broad smile, her heart skipped a beat. "Lin Feng," said Mu Yun. She was surprised. She didn't think she would ever see him here. "Are you all right?" asked Lin Feng, smiling back at Mu Yun. "Yes, good old routine. My life is peaceful and tranquil. I'm happy," replied Mu Yun. "What about you? What are you doing here?" "I was in the region and thought I'd come and see you," said Lin Feng smiled. Mu Yun blushed despite herself. Then, she looked at the people waiting and said, "Could you all come back tomorrow?" The people waiting were stunned, everyone looking at Lin Feng. Who is this guy? Mu Yun never wasted a minute when it came to healing patients. This was a man. Lin Feng sensed that many men were looking at him coldly. "No need, I'll help you," said Lin Feng smiling. He released life cosmic energies around everybody. People all sensed an incredible vitality surround them. Some astonished people realized that their injuries were instantly healed. Who was that guy? His cosmic energies were incredible. He was a powerful emperor. Mu Yun laughed when she saw that, and continued healing people with Lin Feng's help. Chapter 22-29. great changes over time. Lin Feng was extremely strong. He could easily heal ordinary injuries instantly. For injuries which weren't obvious, Mu Yin had some remedies. Together they quickly finished healing everyone. When they left together, people stayed there and watched them leave. Some were envious and jealous. Mu Yin was like a goddess to them. She was looking at that man with admiration and kindness. At that moment, they were wondering whether their priestess Mu Yin was in love with him or not. Was it the reason why she refused to be with anyone else? Because she liked him? Lin Feng and Mu Yin smiled at one another. Lin Feng, since the last time you came to Yaoyi Island, how much have you progressed? Asked Mu Yin, smiling lightly. I'm now at the top of the Huangqi layer, replied Lin Feng easily. How fast? Mu Yin's lips twitched. Your fighting abilities have always been higher than your cultivation level. I wonder how strong you are now. Lin Feng gave a non-committal reply. He looked at Mu Yin and said, I'm traveling because I want to become a great emperor now. Oh, I'm sure you will succeed, said Mu Yin confidently. She had faith in Lin Feng. He had achieved so many things in life. Back then, he had destroyed the celestial Qi castle. Yun, what do you intend to do in the future? Asked Lin Feng, smiling. What could I do? I'll stay here and live a peaceful life. That's the best for me. Mu Yin smiled. Her eyes twinkled. It was difficult to know what she was thinking. Your entire life? Lin Feng asked her. Yes, I like it that way. I like the environment here. And I like people here too. Mu Yin nodded. If you're happy here, then it's perfect. I hope you'll always be happy, said Lin Feng. An old man arrived. When he saw Lin Feng, he was surprised and smiled. Little Lin Feng, you came to see little Yin? Uncle Chiu, yes, I came to see Yin. Lin Feng answered politely. This old man was Mu Yin's neighbor. In the past, Lin Feng had lived in their tribe, so he knew her neighbors. Back then, they sometimes chatted together. Alright, good. You should take her with you. Even though the tribe needs her, she's bored here alone. Uncle Chiu smiled. Lin Feng was surprised and glanced at Mu Yin. Mu Yin blushed and said, Grandpa Chiu, what are you talking about? You tell me, said Uncle Chiu. I saw you grow up. I know how you feel. Each time you talk about little Lin Feng, you seem to be happy. Your most beautiful smile appears on your face. You think I don't understand those things? Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. Mu Yin blushed even more. She lowered her head and glanced at Lin Feng. Yun, I don't want you to leave, but I hope you can go with little Lin Feng. This little boy is a good boy. Please stop, said Mu Yin, stamping one foot. In the distance, the crowd saw that. As expected, Mu Yin liked him. Alright, if you don't want to. I don't know what you think, said Uncle Chiu, shaking his head in exasperation. Lin Feng looked at Mu Yin. Mu Yin raised her head and said to Lin Feng, Lin Feng, don't listen to Uncle Chiu. I'm happy in the tribe. I understand, said Lin Feng, nodding and sighing. He walked to Mu Yin, put his hands on her cheeks and smiled. If you need anything, ask me. Alright, Mu Yin nodded. She didn't dare look Lin Feng in the eyes. I'm off. When I have time, I'll come back and see you, said Lin Feng. Mu Yin raised her head and stared at him. She looked sad. He had just arrived. Was he leaving already? She forced herself to smile and nodded. Alright, that's a promise. That's a promise, Lin Feng nodded. They looked at each other for a few more seconds. Lin Feng took his hands back and turned around. Then, he rose up into the air and disappeared. Mu Yin looked sad and nostalgic as she stared after him for long minutes. Lin Feng and Tang Yu continued their journey. Tiantai controlled the 9 great celestial castles these days. Qingdi Mountain didn't have much power there anymore. Tiantai had too many contacts. Goldfire City's Goldfire Tower, Sword Mountain, Yaoyi Island, the Holy City, and Tiantai's headquarters in the Holy City. Gradually, Tiantai was gaining power and influence everywhere. Tiantai also continued recruited geniuses in Champion University, in the Holy City. Lin Feng didn't stop in on the 9 great celestial castles, he just crossed the area. He went to Yaoyi Island, Goldfire City, and then back to Sword Mountain. Hu Yu and Emperor Shen Yu were back at Yaoyi Island. At Sword Mountain, Lin Feng exchanged views on cultivation with Emperor Wu Tianjian. Emperor Wu Tianjian was astonished by his growth. Lin Feng continued traveling. Time passed and a year went by. 2 years had passed the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. Out on a vast sea, Devamarakalpa's strength fell from the sky onto Lin Feng's body. The earth and sky were shaking. Demon dragon-shaped energies appeared in the sky and kept pounding on him. After 9 waves of Kulpa strength, Lin Feng's physical strength had increased again. However, Lin Feng didn't look satisfied. He raised his head and looked thoughtful. Back when he was at the top of the Zun Qi layer, cosmic energies should have cleansed his body. However, because he had a forbidden body, cosmic energies hadn't come down, and he hadn't been able to break through to the Huang Qi layer. Even if he could control cosmic energies when he was at the top of the Zun Qi layer. What was going to happen now? Would he be able to break through to the Di Qi layer? Would the same thing happen again? The Kulpa Indestructible Devamara skill was a terrifying technique. It was even great for Saint Emperors, and Lin Feng was only an emperor. Now he had the full version, so there was no reason for him not to break through to the Di Qi layer. However, he hadn't done so yet. His physical strength was incredible and stable. Only his cultivation level didn't follow. He raised his head and looked at the sky. He didn't understand. What did it mean to have a forbidden body? Back then, he hadn't managed to break through to the Huang Qi layer, and now, would he able to break through to the Di Qi layer? What was he supposed to do to continue progressing on the path of cultivation? Lin Feng spent 2 years that way. People slowly forgot about the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. All the cultivators who had participated practiced cultivation in peace, and people slowly forgot about them, except Chu Chunxiu. Chu Chunxiu was still very famous. Even though he hadn't finished first, he had finished in the top 3, and according to legends in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds, the destiny wheel had rotated because of him. The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds was a special place in the continent. It stood at the top. They knew more than most people in the continent. People knew what it meant when the destiny wheel rotated. Chu Chunxiu was in the supreme animal world's Ganges time, and the fortune shrine also acknowledged him. After having gone there, the rumors spread that he had broken through to the Di Qi layer. After that he fought against a great imperial dragon. 2 years later, the news spread that Chu Chunxiu had come out of Ganges time, and that he had won against a genius of the dragon clan. He was progressing extremely fast. Chu Chunxiu was backed up by the fortune shrine and the supreme animal world. It proved that he was extremely strong. People were convinced that he was the one who had made the destiny wheel rotate. Apart from Chu Chunxiu, who had his own life, Kong Ming, who had ranked second at the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds, was also becoming an astounding cultivator. However, after the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds, he had disappeared. As for Zhou Rongman, who had ranked 4th, he shook the whole imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. Apart from Chu Chunxiu, the second most famous cultivator was Zhou Rongman, because everywhere where he went he said to people, "My name is Zhou Rongman." Hua Qingfeng was more discreet. Sometimes, people noticed him in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. However, according to rumors, his cultivation level hadn't changed, as if he were stuck in the Huang Qi layer. That seemed inconsistent with his past performances. Regarding the other cultivators of the top 100, they could travel from and to the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds freely. Many of them preferred traveling around the world to become stronger, however. Of course, all that news was about the emperors of the meeting. However, all those things had nothing to do with Lin Feng anymore. Tang Yuyu was with him, and they were traveling around the Dark Night region. They were getting ready to go to other regions as well. Lin Feng knew what was going on in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds, because he had left a clone there. However, nothing could distract him. He stayed focused. Even if he hadn't managed to break through to the Di Qi layer, he didn't get nervous, and continued practicing cultivation. People who were strong and tough enough to withstand disasters would see hope and victory. Lin Feng had always been that way, and that wasn't going to change. Chapter 2230. Long night city time flew by. It was as brief as a glimpse of a white colt flashing past a chink in the wall. Lin Feng traveled, he crossed cities and cities, and even forgot about time. Deep in a forest in purple clouds, Lin Feng was facing a terrifying beast. It had 4 hoofs like an ox, the head of a tiger, the claws of an eagle, and terrifying eyes. "Stupid humans," said the beast aggressively. Its chi was boiling over. Beasts in the surroundings fled. This was a young beast master of the Di-Chi layer. It was an earth-type beast, and had incredible defensive skills, and controlled heaviness Dao strength. At that moment, Lin Feng and the beast were standing in a gigantic crater. Lin Feng's blood was boiling and shaking. When the heaviness Dao reached a certain level, it could crush people flat under their own weight. An ordinary emperor would have died instantly. Even emperors at the top of the Huangqi layer could feel under pressure against such beasts. Even Lin Feng's muscles twitched. At that moment, Lin Feng's clothes were not very clean, his hair was messy, his beard had grown out and was long already. He had already spent some time in this and killed many beasts. The gigantic Great Imperial Beast opened his mouth, and a terrifying earth spear shot from it at Lin Feng. Lin Feng grunted coldly. He jumped away as spears continuously emerged from the beast's mouth, attacking him one after another. There were cracks as some hit him, and weren't able to pierce through him. His physical body was incredible. The beast was speechless. A great imperial beast surprisingly had no way to injure an emperor? Lin Feng's physical strength was obviously incredible. He had studied the Kulpa Indestructible Devamara skill, and the Devamara body cleansing technique. His defense was astonishing. However, his cultivation level hadn't risen, and sometimes, Lin Feng felt annoyed about it. 1 year, 2 years he remained calm, but as time passed, he felt more and more nervous. The Devamara Kulpa strength was becoming useless. He couldn't break through. Lin Feng started having doubts about himself. It was even more difficult than before, when he couldn't break through to the Huangqi layer. He didn't know what to do. He had sent Tang Yuyu back to his spirit's world. He could only rely on himself to break through to the Di-Chi layer. When the great imperial beast saw that, he looked at Lin Feng ferociously. The air began to rumble, and a terrifying heaviness strength surrounded Lin Feng as the beast galloped towards him. It felt like millions of elephants were stampeding towards him. Lin Feng continued running forwards. An incredible amount of demon lights flashed. He raised his arms and his fists, the atmosphere distorting around his fists. It felt like the earth and sky were about to collapse. The great imperial beast released a great earth sword Tenjiang Long. It was impossible to dodge. Lin Feng released and condensed demon strength. A gigantic black sword appeared, also hiltless. It collided with the enemy's gigantic sword. The atmosphere kept trembling from the chi in the air. Die! Millions of threads of death strength turned into millions of spears and moved towards the beast. The atmosphere became dark and desolate. Everything died around those demon energies. Even the grass turned black and started rotting. The great imperial beast's face turned deathly pale, as a pitch-black strength surrounded his body. His life was being eaten away. This emperor's cosmic energies were extremely powerful. He was a great emperor, but he couldn't compete with this high-level emperor. What a genius! Lin Feng had started understanding Dao power when he was a medium-level emperor. Such human beings were terrifying. Quite often, celestial emperors started understanding Dao power a little bit better. And usually they understood Dao power, as well as Lin Feng, when they became saint emperors. Lin Feng could easily crush ordinary great emperors, but in general, he could defeat all sorts of great emperors already. The great imperial beast roared furiously. Lin Feng's terrifying Dao power scared him. He had the impression he was about to die. A gigantic hand appeared. Earth strength condensed, and turned into a gigantic wall blocking off the death strength. However, Lin Feng still arrived before it, the air crackling around him. The death strength rolled around, and swept away its chi before surrounding it. The beast roared defiantly, before turning around, and fleeing into the distance. However, Lin Feng wasn't ready to let him escape. He followed lightning quick. A death spear pierced through its body, and at the same time, he punched its skull. The beast suddenly stopped moving, and then crashed onto the ground. These days, great imperial beasts couldn't do much against Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't find them strong anymore. Lin Feng's cultivation level didn't change, but he kept becoming stronger. Back in the celestial country, mountains of corpses formed around him. He was already much stronger than back then. Lin Feng looked at the gigantic body and took it away. Great imperial beasts' bodies were still useful. He continued walking through the forest. He was in the depths of a gloomy forest, and there were many terrifying beasts there. Many of them were gigantic, imposing, and magnificent. All the beasts were intelligent. Lin Feng was practicing in the forest. He killed as many beasts as he could. Even great imperial beasts couldn't do much against him. Lin Feng crossed that wild country. There were also some human beings there. In most places in the continent, human beings and beasts coexisted and competed. What a dense and thick bestial qi, thought Lin Feng, looking at an animal castle. It was new to him, but he just studied it for a short time before continuing along. After a very long time, he saw another human being. He didn't know where he was. He was just wandering without purpose in the depths of purple clouds. In front of Lin Feng, there were two young people, a man and a woman, wearing beautiful clothes. They seemed to be disciples from a sect, and looked quite strong. When they saw Lin Feng, they were startled. He was such a mess. His hair was messy, and his clothes were torn apart. They thought he must have almost died in the forest. Even though Lin Feng was a mess, he wasn't dirty. Only his hair was messy, he had a really long beard, and his clothes were torn apart. But with his physical strength, his skin was as polished as bronze. He just looked wild like a caveman. Your Excellency, did you fight against a wave of ferocious wild beasts? The young man asked Lin Feng politely. He didn't know what was going on, but there had been terrifying waves of wild beasts in the animal empire. Some extremely strong beasts had escaped from the forest and had killed many humans. Some people who had gone hunting had also died. A wave of ferocious wild beasts? Said Lin Feng, after remaining silent for a few seconds. He hadn't heard a human voice in such a long time. He wasn't used to it anymore. The animal empire and Long Night City often fight. A short time ago, many beasts attacked people at the periphery of Long Night City. Many people died. Don't you know about that? Many people from Long Night City came here to kill beasts, said the young man calmly. Even though Lin Feng looked wild, they couldn't see his cultivation level, so he was probably very strong. When the young man saw that Lin Feng remained silent, he looked at him coldly and asked, Your Excellency, are you a wild beast? Lin Feng suddenly raised his head, and the young man went silent. He continued walking towards the city without saying anything more. Chapter 2231. Folders. Lin Feng walked forwards, his steps heavy. He looked exhausted. His hair covered his face, but his eyes glittered. His soul strength kept floating around as he inspected his surroundings. To break through to the Diqi layer, my soul must fuse together with the earth and sky. Attacks become real at that cultivation level. So when a fire-type cultivator uses fire, he can burn mountains for real. A great emperor's soul is also stronger. Great emperors can also use the strength of the earth and sky as their own. It's also easier to understand Tao intent when you're a great emperor. Therefore, many people only start understanding Tao intent after breaking through to the Diqi layer, thought Lin Feng. He remembered what the diviner had told him. The gods have abandoned me. Maybe that is the reason why I can't break through to the Diqi layer right now, mused Lin Feng. However, at that moment, his eyes were dazzling. He saw some strength in the distance which attracted his soul. What is that place? He asked himself. He had unceasingly tried to fuse his soul together with the earth and sky. He had been looking for opportunities, but in vain. It was just like back then, when he couldn't break through to the Huangqi layer. Maybe the earth and sky were rejecting him once again? Lin Feng arrived in front of a gigantic stone and jumped atop it. He sat down cross-legged and soul strength filled the air, enrolling far into the distance. Lin Feng's soul strength was extremely powerful now. He could leave his corporeal body whenever he wished. Of course, it allowed him to see far away, but it was also dangerous. If he encountered someone evil, that person could attack his soul. After having broken through to the Diqi layer, when a cultivator's soul had fused together with the earth and sky, it was much easier and more appropriate to leave one's body. These days, Lin Feng only released a few threads of soul strength to inspect his surroundings. Lin Feng's soul strength moved like the wind through the depths of Long Night City. Everything his soul saw appeared in his field of vision. It was an ancient city, with imposing and magnificent buildings that contained an incredible qi. The buildings there almost all looked like castles, and the people were strong. Emperors could be seen everywhere. There were also many great emperors, and the city almost seemed boundless. His soul floated for a long time. Lin Feng was amazed. What kind of place was this? His soul was being attracted by something. Was there a treasure here? Lin Feng was curious, so his soul continued floating around in the city. Finally, quite far away from his real body, he saw a castle with purple qi floating around it like a purple cloud. However, in front of that fortress were many dark buildings that looked like gates, death water flowing atop them. They all contained a terrifying strength and surrounded the whole fortress. That energy looked like the energy he had seen in the King of Hell's palace. What is that place? Thought Lin Feng. It had attracted his soul strength. The purple qi was attracting his soul. It was a mysterious feeling. The purple qi was thick and powerful. It was probably the territory of a powerful group. Many cultivators had gathered there. They seemed like they were there to sense the purple qi. Some people were standing outside a fortress. There was a young man in the crowd. Someone came here with their soul. What a prodigy, said someone next to him. Impressive. In the whole city, only people from Jiuyu's ministry have a purple soul qi, which then turns into the purple soul celestial walls, which can envelop Long Night City. Maybe that person is attracted by purple soul qi, said the young man, smiling coldly. So what? Even if that's the case, many people are insatiably greedy. It's still difficult to get close to Jiuyu's ministry. Back then, Brother Yi Ying left Jiuyu's ministry and participated in the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. He finished in the top 20. He's extremely strong. A beautiful woman wearing white clothes said coldly. However, when she heard Yi Ying's name, her beautiful eyes twinkled. How strong do you think the owner of that soul strength is? It's just a thread of soul. I don't think he's a great emperor. He's crazy arrogant to get that close to Jiuyu's ministry, said the young man icily, clenching his fists. He spat out some sword intent, which shot into the distance. Lin Feng sensed the sword energy. His soul flickered and dodged. He wanted to get close to see what was going on there. But surprisingly, someone attacked him. His soul turned into a figure and looked at the young man on the ground. However, the young man frowned and waved his hand. He wanted to block Lin Feng's soul and moved quickly. Lin Feng's soul was getting ready to leave, but sword strength closed on his soul from all directions. It quickly destroyed his soul thread. Idiot, said the young man. He grunted icily, and his sword energy disappeared. On a boulder outside Long Night City, Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes, which glittered with ice-cold lights. He released a terrifying death intent. A great distance away, the one who had just attacked his soul sensed the death intent and shivered. How strong! In Long Night City, there are purple clouds and in some areas there's death water. What is it? Asked Lin Feng to those people icily. They were all startled and felt a great pressure. Their questioner's consciousness could kill them. As expected, it wasn't wise to judge a book by its cover. He looked wild and scary. One of the groups of Long Night City, Jiuyu's ministry, replied that person. What are the purple clouds? Asked Lin Feng. Purple soul qi. Jiuyu's ministry gathers the purple soul qi of the earth and sky in the center of Long Night City. That way, people's souls can fuse together with the earth and sky more easily and become great emperors. How incredible! Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. No wonder there were so many people there. Purple soul qi allows people to understand the earth and sky better. It helps their soul fuse together with the earth and sky more easily. Purple soul qi is mysterious, said that person again. Lin Feng nodded. Then he stood up and gazed off into the distance. In the Fortune Shrine, in a star palace, some starlight twinkled down. There were many stars and pagoda lights. Many people looked busy there, consulting jade talismans, folders, and other things. Have you found it? Asked the diviner of someone who was busy. No. Years have passed, and we have too many folders. The folders are not sorted at all, it's so messy. We need to sort them, and get rid of the useless folders. I still have hope that we can find that folder, though, replied the person. The diviner nodded inside. So many years had passed. Chu Chunxiu was under pressure. The top 10 cultivators were progressing really fast. They had all broken through to the Diqi layer, except Lin Feng. Lin Feng was already as strong as a great emperor. But why he hadn't broken through to the Diqi layer was a mystery. The only explanation was that he was a forbidden person. Even the leader of the shrine was unable to explain why such a thing was happening to Lin Feng. There was probably no other person like him in the world. To understand that matter, it was necessary to do some research and check ancient folders. The forbidden person understood forbidden people better than the other shrines, though. But still, only legends remained about such people. The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds knew about forbidden people better than ordinary people. In the world, many people had heard that expression, but they didn't know what it meant. Have you started looking into the folders which were in the trash bin? Yes, half a year ago, that person confirmed. The fortune shrine had existed for a very long time. They had as many folders as the stars. At that moment someone rushed in. The diviner turned around and asked, "Old buddy, why such a rush?" He was a very core member of the fortune shrine. "I found it," said the old man, shaking his hands. He gave a shiny item to the diviner. The diviner was astonished, and quickly put his godly awareness inside. There was only one sentence. The diviner started breathing faster. He clenched his fists, and the folder instantly disappeared. His heart was pounding, his eyes were twinkling like bright stars. No wonder. Chapter 2232. Purple Soul Strength. Lin Feng walked into Long Night City towards the purple clouds. He seemed to be walking slowly, but actually he was extremely fast. Like the wheels of a carriage, the faster they moved, the slower they looked. Many people couldn't even see him distinctly. There were still many people outside of Jiu Yu's ministry. At that moment, there was a path opened above the black water. There were some people coming out of Jiu Yu's ministry. After a short time, they stopped and looked at the crowd. Today is Jiu Yu's ministry's open house. All the people who have been chosen come here. Many young people walked forwards and up to the 9 gates. The young man who had attacked Lin Feng was with a woman and another man. He said, "We're from the Sword Sect, here to visit Jiu Yu's ministry." "Yes, I recognize you. You don't need a token," said the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry calmly. The 3 cultivators looked particularly proud. Not many people had such a privilege in Jiu Yu's ministry. Even those who had been selected had to have a token. Those 3 enjoyed a good reputation in Long Night City, especially since they were from the Sword Sect. The other people were mostly young people from other sects and powerful groups in town. Every year, powerful groups chose disciples they sent to Jiu Yu's ministry to benefit from Purple Soul Strength. The majority of those people were at the top of the Huangqi layer. After all, the purpose of Purple Soul Strength was to help them fuse their soul together with the earth and sky, and become great emperors. Behind the crowd, a young man who had messy long hair and beard appeared. Many people looked at him because of that. He looked in the direction of Jiu Yu's ministry. There wasn't only Purple Soul Strength there. There was also Death Strength. A river made of death energy was there. The Death Strength was quite pure. This group probably controlled Death Strength as well. "Jiu Yu's ministry," whispered Lin Feng. He continued walking forwards. He raised his head and gazed into the distance. The strong cultivator from Jiu Yu's ministry looked at Lin Feng and said, "Which group sent you, Your Excellency? And do you have your token?" Lin Feng shook his head. He looked at a young man, the one who had attacked his soul. The young man sensed that Lin Feng was looking at him. He had a familiar feeling. He was startled. "You're the one who released that thread of soul strength?" Lin Feng said nothing. The young man grunted icily and released his sword intent, staring at Lin Feng. "You initially thought you could come here to sense Purple Soul Strength with a thread of soul? How insolent." A strong wind started blowing. Lin Feng disappeared. The young man was shocked, and his face stiffened. His sword intent was whistling and moving in every direction. However, someone drew closer and closer to him. He saw messy hair. A hand appeared and grew bigger and bigger. "Piss off!" shouted the young man frantically. Sword lights emerged from his mouth and third eye, and shot towards Lin Feng. However, ice-cold lights emerged from Lin Feng's hair-covered eyes. Death strength smashed the sword lights and destroyed them. His hand crashed onto the young man's neck. The young man was dumbstruck. "Your Excellency, who are you?" "I'm from the Sword Sect. If you have anything to say, tell me," said the young man. Breaking and snapping sounds arose as fingers closed. Lin Feng held him by the neck even tighter. "When you destroyed my soul, you didn't ask me who I was," said Lin Feng icily. "Be merciful," said someone at that moment. It was a member of Jiu Yu's ministry. All the people who were sent to Jiu Yu's ministry had been carefully selected and were outstanding. If they died there, how would Jiu Yu's ministry be able to justify themselves? At least, people had to give them face. "It has nothing to do with Jiu Yu's ministry," said Lin Feng. "He's from the Sword Clan. Your Excellency, even though you're very strong, the strong cultivators of the Sword Sect will come and kill you painfully if you do anything to him," said the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry. "Indeed, I'm from the Sword Sect Yu Song. If you attack me, my teacher will kill you," said the young man again. Lin Feng turned his head sharply, death chi emerging from his third eye and into the brain of the young man. The man's face turned gray, and death chi surrounded his body. Lin Feng let go of him, and the body fell limply down. He had just killed that outstanding young man of the Sword Sect. Death Dao, the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry, was staring at Lin Feng. He looked wild and unkempt, but he was also terrifyingly strong. He had probably been an emperor for a very long time, and practiced Death Dao for dozens of years. That was the only explanation to the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry. "Your Excellency, you're cruel, but your death strength is incredible," said that person, staring at Lin Feng. He was astonished. Lin Feng was probably more than 100 years old. "You killed him." The young man and the young woman who were with him were staring at Lin Feng. Their fellow disciple had just been killed, all because he had destroyed Lin Feng's soul thread. He had been careless. He destroyed that guy's soul thread a moment ago. He was very arrogant because he was a disciple of the Sword Sect. But this time he wasn't lucky, he died for nothing. "He should have been more discreet," said someone. "Yes, indeed. Why destroy someone's soul thread when you don't know them? It's risky and disrespectful. He wasn't strong enough, so he died. It's absolutely normal. If he hadn't provoked that guy, he wouldn't have died," agreed different people. The cultivation world was vast, but it was better to be discreet sometimes to avoid getting killed. Lin Feng looked at the young man and the young woman with his pitch-black eyes. His eyes were filled with murder, so they didn't say anything. Then, Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the member of Jiu Yu's ministry. "Can I go inside and sense the purple cloud?" The strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry was surprised and glanced at the corpse. Lin Feng hadn't listened to him and had killed the Sword Sect's disciple anyway. He wasn't supposed to let him in. However, Lin Feng's death strength was incredible, and it looked similar to their own. He was interested and intrigued. "All right, you can come in," said the great emperor calmly. The two Sword Sect's disciples were astonished and looked at him icily. They couldn't wait to see the strong cultivators of the Sword Sect kill him. "I'll let you dispose of the body. The others follow me," said the strong cultivator of Jiu Yu's ministry to the two Sword Sect disciples, as he entered Jiu Yu's ministry with everybody else. Lin Feng followed. He wanted to sense the purple soul strength. Would it help him fuse his soul together with the earth and sky? Would it help him break through to the Di-Chi layer? Jiu Yu's ministry's people brought the crowd to a vast place with purple clouds everywhere. The purple soul strength rolled around them, and cultivators had an irresistible feeling. They couldn't help but release their souls. As expected, the purple soul strength attracts people's souls. "I wonder if anything will happen," thought Lin Feng. His soul rolled out like other people's souls and moved into the purple clouds. The purple clouds beat at the same pace as their hearts. This is how it feels when your soul fuses together with the earth and sky. It allows you to fuse your soul together with the purple clouds, and then the purple clouds fuse with the earth and sky. Your soul indirectly fuses together with the earth and sky, thought Lin Feng. His soul strength kept penetrating into the purple cloud strength. It really felt as if his soul had fused together with the earth and sky. His soul felt much stronger that way. He could use soul strength, and the strength of the earth and sky to carry out attacks this way. Lin Feng also noticed that his soul defense had increased a lot. So even if his soul was attacked, it was difficult to break it. The most important thing was that cultivators needed to make their soul fuse together with the earth and sky. If they wanted to understand the great and natural Tao of the earth and sky, it would become part of their strength. Everybody has 3 days to enjoy the purple soul strength. If you fight using soul strength, you'll have to bear the responsibilities yourselves. Jiuyu's ministry has nothing to do with duels. However, you can't use physical attacks, only soul attacks, said the Jiuyu's ministry member. The area was vast. Fighting using their souls was a normal thing to do. Besides, many people wanted to use more purple soul strength, so they were definitely going to compete for it. That way, they'd understand the relative principles better. Lin Feng also did his best. He wanted to become a great emperor. He was ready to do his best and use his full strength. However, he didn't know that the diviner was looking for his clone to tell him what he had read in the folder. Chapter 2233. Forbidden Body. No cultivation level in the Fortune Shrine. Lin Feng had left 2 clones in the Fortune Shrine. They fused together, and he sat down cross-legged in the starlit sky to cultivate. The diviner slowly walked towards him without saying anything. However, Lin Feng's clone opened his eyes and looked at the diviner. "Teacher," he greeted the other. The diviner looked at Lin Feng, trying to calm down. His heart was still pounding. He said to Lin Feng, "I found the folder. I may have some not-so-good news." "Tell me, teacher," replied Lin Feng. Even if he needed years to break through to the Di-Chi layer, it didn't matter, as long as he could someday. In the folder, there was only one sentence. "Get ready," the diviner said to him. "All right," Lin Feng nodded. The diviner looked at him and took a deep breath. He said slowly, "Forbidden people have no cultivation level. They can't break through to the Di-Chi layer." Lin Feng was astonished, his heart pounding violently. He pulled a long face. Forbidden people have no cultivation level. They can't break through to the Di-Chi layer. Would he truly never be able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? "Teacher, you said that back then, a great war broke out because of a forbidden person, which means that the cultivator was terrifyingly strong. What is that supposed to mean? That extremely strong cultivator couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer?" asked Lin Feng. He didn't understand. Why was a person who had a forbidden body not able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? How would he ever be able to kill strong great emperors? Or even holy great emperors as an emperor? And then saints? I don't know either. Life must be difficult as a forbidden person. Maybe you can try and find the answer in your spirit's world? Nobody knows about the former forbidden person. However, he was definitely a terrifying fighter. Rest assured, I don't think anyone or anything can stop you. Lin Feng took a deep breath. Even though the diviner was trying to cheer him up, Lin Feng had the impression his world was collapsing around him. What pressure? What would he do if he wasn't able to break through to the Di-Chi layer? What about his agreement with the Snow Clan? What about the Moon Palace? He wouldn't be able to sort out all those things. Lin Feng, come with me to the library. I'll show you some spells. Maybe you'll find something suitable for you, the diviner said to him. Lin Feng nodded. The Fortune Shrine had existed for so many years. They probably had terrifying scriptures. He might learn some interesting things. The diviner turned around inside. He hadn't told Lin Feng the full sentence. He had only told him half of it. But he wanted Lin Feng to understand things by himself. What happened there influenced Lin Feng's real body. At that moment, he raised his head and looked at the purple clouds. He looked confused. He said, I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer. I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer. So how will I practice cultivation? Many people looked at Lin Feng. What was going on? Why was he saying that? They thought, how old is he? He's so strong. His Tao power is incredible. His comprehension abilities are great. Even if he needs a few years, he should be able to break through to the Diqi layer? What's wrong with him? Someone grunted icily. His soul strength turned into a gigantic dragon, which absorbed the purple soul strength. Many people's souls were also colliding. However, each time someone moved back, some people even got injured and recalled their soul strength, after which they sat down cross-legged and closed their eyes to recover. Some people are extremely strong, their soul strength is astonishing. People weren't surprised to see that. Each time people came, they fought over the purple soul strength. It was normal. 3 people's soul strength kept roaring out and absorbing terrifying amounts of purple soul strength. Many people didn't want to take risks, so they stayed away. Lin Feng's soul was a demon shadow. It was slowly becoming bigger. However, at that moment, a terrifying dragon moved towards him and demanded icily, "Piss off." The dragon opened his mouth, he wanting to absorb Lin Feng's soul, as well as the purple soul strength. Lin Feng looked at him coldly. His soul turned into a gigantic death demon. He stood up and looked at the enemy with his pitch-black eyes. He looked like an inky black and purple demon giant. A terrifying strength surged towards the man. The dragon roared out, now surrounded by death chi. "I can't break through to the Diqi layer. I can't break through to the Diqi layer? Even if I have to defeat the gods, I will become a peerless cultivator someday," thought Lin Feng. He was unhappy. Back then, he had done the same thing, finding his own solution to break through to the Huangqi layer. "Die!" shouted the man furiously. The dragon struggled to break free, but his opponent's soul looked desperate. He was going to die. "Spare my life!" shouted the cultivator frantically. He was desperate and had lost all his arrogance. But a terrifying strength was converging towards his soul from every direction. The soul dragon turned into death chi and disappeared. He wasn't able to recall his soul into his body. If he managed to do that, Lin Feng wouldn't have been able to finish him so easily. But he had dared act that arrogantly, as people didn't normally dare fight against such people's souls. His soul disappeared, his body turned gray, now a corpse. The crowd knew who he was, a genius from the Luang clan. He had been killed that way. What a pity, especially since he had been selected to participate. Lin Feng didn't know what the others were thinking. His soul roared out, and everybody moved back. Death Dao filled the air, and he occupied a majority of the purple cloud territory. "Your Excellency, leave some space. Or do you intend to absorb all the purple soul strength alone?" asked someone icily. An endless number of death spears appeared and moved towards the speaker's soul. His face turned deathly pale when he sensed the terrifying death strength. Lin Feng grunted icily. The death strength contained a nihility sword. A horrible shriek rose up. That person's soul was injured, but he managed to recall it into his body. He opened his eyes and looked at Lin Feng's soul with murder in his eyes. Lin Feng ignored him and continued invading the area. Everybody moved away from him. Very quickly, he was almost the only one to benefit from the purple clouds. People opened their eyes one after another and stared at him icily. That guy is going too far. He's the only one benefiting from the purple strength. "Insolent bastard. Unpardonable," swore someone icily. Nobody wanted to let Lin Feng benefit from the purple strength alone, but they couldn't attack using their real bodies. They could only use soul strength. The 9 people hadn't thought someone would be so aggressive and would use all the purple strength for their own benefit. Lin Feng enjoyed it all. People had been forced to recall their strength into their bodies, but what could they do against him? Those people had come thinking it would be an incredible opportunity, but found they were facing such a terrifying cultivator. In the end, the purple strength kept rising to the skies. Lin Feng controlled the purple strength using his soul. It wasn't difficult at all. His soul and the purple strength had easily fused together, and after that, it wasn't difficult at all to make that fusion of soul strength fuse together with the earth and sky. On top of that, he could easily make the whole strength do anything he wanted. This is how it feels when your soul has fused together with the earth and sky. It's a necessary step to become a great emperor, thought Lin Feng, making his soul strength rise high up in the air. The purple soul strength could easily fuse together with the earth and sky, so it gave Lin Feng a good opportunity to experience what it felt like. Everybody was looking at him icily, with murder in their eyes. Back in the ministry, two young people went out and bowed before the strong cultivator of Jiuyu's ministry. Their social statuses were extraordinary. "That guy is so filthy," frowned a young woman. "But he's also extremely strong," replied one of the 9 strong cultivators. "He's really strong indeed. His soul must be terrifyingly strong," agreed the woman. She looked at the sky and said, "He hasn't broken through to the Di-Chi layer, and that isn't normal. He should join us." Chapter 2234. Fierce Battle, Join Jiuyu's Ministry? "But what if he can't break through to the Di-Chi layer?" asked the other woman indifferently. She didn't really agree. Even if he can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, it doesn't matter. It can't be harmful for Jiuyu's ministry. If he manages to break through to the Di-Chi layer, he'll become terrifyingly strong. The young man smiled. "Qing Er, we'll need your help here." "All right," the girl nodded. Lin Feng was still enjoying the purple soul strength. The purple soul strength was high up in the air and pulsing steadily. The purple soul strength turned into a dragon, then a sword, and then into many other things. It transformed constantly, able to transform into the 10,000 things of creation. A figure appeared in the air. It looked like a death god and roared furiously. Millions of terrifying death spears appeared. The soul attack was terrifyingly powerful. "With my strength, I can easily borrow purple soul strength. Actually, in normal circumstances, I should also be able to make my soul fuse together with the earth and sky. But I can't if I don't use purple soul strength." I really don't understand, Lin Feng sighed. He didn't need to try anymore, because he knew that in normal conditions, he should have been able to do this a long time before. But he was different from other people. Why? He recalled his soul into his body and opened his eyes. He looked confused. No cultivation level? He couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer? How could he continue practicing cultivation that way? Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the purple soul strength. Years had already passed. If he couldn't break through to the Di-Chi layer, how would he be able to go to the Snow Clan? Xue Ao had a king-type body and was terrifyingly strong. In 20 years, he would become even scarier. He couldn't win against Xue Ao, relying solely on physical strength. He needed to break through. At that moment, Qing Er arrived next to Lin Feng and asked, "How did the purple soul strength feel?" Lin Feng turned around and saw Qing Er. She was smiling widely and looked quite charming. People usually found such women extremely beautiful. However, Lin Feng was used to such women already. He had so many in life. He just said calmly, "I'm done already." He stood up and started walking away. The purple soul strength couldn't help him break through to the Di-Chi layer. Qing Er's beautiful eyes gleamed. She was talking to him, and he didn't react at all. "Wait," she shouted. Lin Feng stopped, turned his head and asked, "What do you want?" "There are many geniuses in Jiuyu's ministry. If you were to join us, you'll definitely break through to the Di-Chi layer," said Qing Er, smiling at him. However, Lin Feng stopped looking at her and resumed walking forward, saying, "Thank you for the offer," as he continued walking away. Qing Er's smile stiffened, and she glared at Lin Feng's back unhappily. "That guy is really rude, arrogant, and overbearing, but he's only a tiny little emperor. He dares act so arrogantly in front of me." "He, very arrogant indeed," said the young man, smiling thinly while walking up to her. Nobody had thought he wouldn't give face to Jiuyu's ministry. "You made me go and invite that moron." "How mean," said the woman unhappily. Lin Feng had humiliated her in front of so many people. For someone with such a high social status as hers, it wasn't good. "Forget it. That guy has killed someone from the sword sect. He refused our invitation, but when he goes out, he'll be in trouble," said that young man calmly. "We can go and watch." "All right," said Qing Er, nodding agreement. She followed after the young man. Lin Feng sighed. He looked cold and detached but confused too. When he arrived on the ancient road, some people there looked at him icily. The sword sect. "Teacher, that guy killed our fellow disciple even though nobody offended him or said anything to him," said those 2 disciples who had left earlier, pointing at Lin Feng. Their eyes were filled with murder. Their teacher was wearing a clean white cloak and had a sword in his back. His sword intent filled the air. He was staring at Lin Feng, sword intent even emerging from his eyes. Lin Feng's eyes were pitch black. He had killed that guy even though nobody had said or done anything to him. That guy had destroyed his thread of soul strength. So they hadn't said anything? Of course. Lin Feng ignored them and continued walking away. However, the middle-aged man said to Lin Feng, "Stay here." Lin Feng ignored him and continued walking. "I'm a great emperor. I don't want to bully young people." "Stop now. You have 3 tries," said the middle-aged man calmly. He didn't walk towards Lin Feng, but he sounded ice-cold, and sharp sword energies started gathering around him. Finally, he started walking towards Lin Feng, and several ancient swords appeared in the air. Lin Feng didn't stop though. He continued walking away, and completely ignored the man. Behind him, Qing Er and the young man from Jiu Yu's ministry smiled icily. Lin Feng dared act that arrogant in front of a great emperor of the sword sect? The sword sect was a powerful group, and that teacher had a good reputation in the sword sect. He was a great emperor, and few people could compete with him in the sword sect. Lin Feng was going to die. The 2 disciples looked at Lin Feng sinisterly, as if they were looking at a dead body. Lin Feng was feeling sad, because the diviner had told him he wouldn't be able to break through to the Di Qi layer. He felt desperate and hopeless. He just let the sword energies surround him and did nothing. The sword sect's teacher was astonished and getting more and more furious. His sword energies kept getting more and more intense, humming as they gathered. Several sharp swords streaked across the sky and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng continued walking. Around him, Holy Spirit's lights appeared and turned into sword intent. His terrifying sword intent also became more and more intense. At the same time, he also released a terrifying death strength. "Sword cultivator. He's a sword cultivator too," remarked the crowd. "Interesting. He dared confront a sword cultivator of the Di Qi layer. It didn't seem like he wanted to escape." However, at that moment the crowd was astonished. A terrifyingly sharp sword attacked him, but didn't pierce through. More holes appeared in his clothes, that was all. What a physical body! Many people's hearts were pounding. The 2 cultivators of Jiu Yu's ministry were astonished too. That physical strength. He could resist such terrifying attacks. How was that possible? It was a fact though, he had just done it. The middle-aged man grunted coldly. Energies began to hum violently. Sword intent condensed and turned into a gigantic ancient sword. The earth and sky could fuse together with that world. It could attack both a cultivator's body and soul. Lin Feng didn't move. Death Holy Spirits appeared and absorbed death strength. The atmosphere around them became dark. At the same time, a gigantic sword condensed and oppressed the atmosphere around it. The great emperor suddenly felt unsafe. "Die!" shouted that person icily. His sword moved towards Lin Feng. It was like millions of swords were moving towards Lin Feng. At the same time, the death strength descended from the sky. The atmosphere around it distorted and explosive. Lin Feng jumped and moved towards his opponent. He landed in front of him, raising his fist, which was filled with destructive death strength. The great emperor's face stiffened. He shouted defiantly and released a sharp soul sword. However, Lin Feng's fist reached him first, and there was a brutal explosion. Lin Feng's opponent's body and soul exploded instantly. The crowd around was astonished. That guy had just killed a great emperor of the sword sect with one punch? The 2 cultivators of Jiu Yu's ministry were astonished. How was that possible? Lin Feng continued walking away. He looked furious. The 2 sword sect's disciples' hearts were pounding. They wanted to leave. However, Lin Feng looked over at them icily, and their souls shook. Lin Feng stamped their souls with death strength. Instantly, their faces turned gray and they collapsed. One blink and they had died. Lin Feng still looked cold and detached. The atmosphere was gray around him. Everything in his way seemed to die. People who offended him had to die. Chapter 2235. Chasing Lin Feng left. People watched him leave, still astonished, their hearts pounding. What a strong emperor. One blink, and he could kill people. He had even killed a great emperor. His fighting abilities were far better than his cultivation level. The crowd was mainly astonished because Lin Feng had killed the great emperor so easily. He hadn't used any trump card. He had almost killed him without really paying attention. In other words, before the battle even started, he already knew a great emperor couldn't do much against him. Against emperors, a simple glance was enough to kill them. And I just said I hoped he'd become a great emperor. He's just an emperor now. But he's already terrifying, whispered the young man of Jiuyu's ministry, staring after Lin Feng's figure. He's probably a few hundred years old, and he can't level up. That's why he's good at fighting, said Qing Er. She thought that Lin Feng was extremely old. In her eyes, that's why Lin Feng was a strong fighter. But she didn't think he was talented. However, Lin Feng didn't care about what those people thought. He was walking through Long Night City feeling annoyed. Cultivation was so strange. In the past, he wasn't very strong. But at least his cultivation was normal, until he reached the top of the Zunqi layer. Then, he was abandoned by the gods. And he couldn't use the cosmic energies of the earth and sky. Now he was at the top of the Huangqi layer. And he couldn't break through to the Diqi layer. How annoying. It was even worse than the previous time. This time, Lin Feng had the impression he was at a dead end. At the same time, the sword sect learned that Lin Feng had killed a few of their disciples, so they sent some people to chase Lin Feng. In Fortune Shrine, the diviner took Lin Feng to the archive room and said to his clone, Lin Feng, there aren't only archives from strong cultivators who were from the Fortune Shrine. There are also papers obtained from other strong cultivators. Have a look. However, you are different from other people. You are walking on your own path. You don't practice the same kind of cultivation as normal people, so you can only use other people's knowledge as a reference. Yes, thank you very much, teacher, said Lin Feng nodded. He started checking the different books and folders. The Fortune Shrine had millions of priceless books. In the outside world, powerful groups would be ready to kill for such books. However, Lin Feng was a core disciple of the Fortune Shrine, so he could look as he wished. Lin Feng's clone went through many different books. They had been written by terrifyingly strong cultivators. All the cultivators who had written those books had different ways of practicing cultivation. Each had their own ways. Lin Feng had a particularly strong impression when he read some of them. One of them had been written by a Sakyamuni. It said in life there are 8 distresses: birth, age, sickness, death, parting with what we love, meeting with what we hate, unattained aims, and all the ills of the 5 skandhas. Everybody has to go through those things in life. Everybody knows the mental and physical sufferings arising from the full-orbed activities of the skandhas. Even if cultivators are less prone to suffering, they also have to go through such things. They are part of life. And by practicing cultivation, a cultivator can reach enlightenment and attain Buddhahood. The 8 distresses in Buddhism. Nobody can avoid them, thought Lin Feng. Could anyone attain Buddhahood if they understood the 8 distresses? Having to part with someone Lin Feng loved made him suffer. He wasn't with Meng Qing. It made him extremely sad. And now he couldn't break through to the Diqi layer. What a nightmare. Understanding the 8 distresses was important. But could Lin Feng understand them? Could he accept and even embrace suffering to achieve Buddhahood? No, that wasn't his path. He wasn't a Buddhist. He had his own path. Lin Feng continued reading. He found another interesting book. Some people did all they could to overcome all difficulties with an indomitable will, trying to become peerless sword cultivators, to become Buddhas, or to be respected by everyone in the world. However, what if a cultivator made efforts his entire life and realized things were not as hoped? How would they feel? In the book, there was the story of a determined monk. He wanted to become immortal and teach people his entire life. However, a great world war started and people fought everywhere in the world, plunging everyone into an abyss of misery. The monk became furious and started killing and caused rivers of blood to flow. He ended up in contradiction with his own self. In the end, he didn't achieve Buddhahood. He became a demon. In the book, someone had come to greet and learn from the Buddhist monk. In the end, after having gone through innumerable hardships and tribulations, he had managed to become a Buddha. He was exhausted, however. And even worse, after becoming a Buddha, He had realized that things were not as he had hoped. It was all a lie. He hadn't learned from a Buddhist monk, but from a demon. Everything he had done was for the demon. After that, that cultivator had stopped believing in anything or anyone. He had decided to have it his own way, and became a terrifyingly strong murderer. When Lin Feng read those books, he shivered. Those stories were about terrifyingly strong cultivators. He also had the impression that those people could be anyone. However, no matter whether they had become peerless Buddhist cultivators or peerless demon cultivators, in the end, those people had all had an incredible life. Their stories were astounding. To reach the top, it was necessary to go through a lot. Lin Feng's clone didn't stop. He continued reading books. Each time he finished a book, he understood something new. Lin Feng's real body was taking a walk in Long Night City. His death intent had calmed down already. His hair was still covering his sharp and dazzling eyes. Because of the death intent around him, nobody dared get too close. In the distance, some people moved towards him. They were on gigantic swords and energies were rolling around them. Lin Feng knew that people had been following him the whole time, but he had decided to ignore them. He was in purple clouds, not in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. If people wanted to kill him here, it wouldn't be easy. Besides, he cared about nothing anymore. He was ready to fight with anyone. Energies surged up, and finally some people on gigantic swords appeared in front of him. When the people in town saw that, they were astonished. People from the sword sect. They've been chasing an emperor? So many strong sword cultivators, and they're all great emperors. What a strong force. Why did they chase that emperor? I don't know. He must be important, otherwise, why would great emperors chase a mere emperor? The crowd asked one another. A strong cultivator of the sword sect shouted, "Your Excellency, stop!" An endless amount of sharp sword strength droned angrily around them. "If you don't want to die, piss off," said Lin Feng icily. His voice carried death strength. The sword cultivators of the sword sect retorted icily. "You killed people from the sword sect, and you think you'll be able to leave Long Night City?" The 5 great emperors moved towards Lin Feng at the same time, and released even more sword intent. Lin Feng released an endless amount of death intent, his eyes growing colder and colder. He was ready to kill. Millions of death imprints filled the air and floated around him. His death intent made the earth and sky tremble around him. People on the ground, who weren't far enough away, had the impression they were going to die. An empty space deployment spell appeared under Lin Feng's feet, and he disappeared, reappearing in front of a sword cultivator of the sword cultivator. "Great dream of life," said Lin Feng. The sword cultivator started feeling drowsy. However, his formidable sword intent kept him awake. "Die!" Death intent descended from the sky and penetrated into his body. Lin Feng released cursing lights through his eyes. Death swords descended from the sky in all directions. "Piss off!" shouted that cultivator furiously. Sword energies streaked across the sky. However, Lin Feng didn't care. He raised his fist and condensed sword strength in it, destroying the sword intent easily. Nothing could stop him. The death intent corroded his opponent's life. The millions of death stamps hit him at the same time. He punched his opponent. The great emperor exploded loudly. The other great emperors gathered around him. They wanted to kill him. "This guy is very strong. We need assistance," said one of them, taking out a jade talisman and informing other people. Lin Feng was much stronger than they had expected. He could easily kill sword great emperors. Chapter 2236. Suddenly sword lights split the sky. The other 4 sword great emperors attacked at the same time. Lin Feng flashed away. The atmosphere around him warped as he reappeared in the distance. Sword lights appeared behind him and struck him, but nothing happened. The sword lights couldn't pierce through his defense. A strong wind started blowing. Lin Feng released an incredible amount of wind cosmic energies, and moved faster than they could see. The 4 great emperors had all used their jade talismans to call for assistance from the sword sect. After seeing how fast and strong Lin Feng was, they didn't feel confident anymore. They had to join hands, that was certain. Just one against Lin Feng, he could kill them all. But because they were several people and together, Lin Feng thankfully couldn't kill all of them at once. How fast? The great emperors of the sword sect chased after Lin Feng, but they realized he was faster than they were. Besides, the fastest ones didn't dare go out in front alone. They had to stay together. Death intent kept emerging from Lin Feng's eyes. Millions of death stamps floated around him. He looked like a death god. Holy spirit lights condensed around him and turned into a gigantic black death sword. The atmosphere became oppressive. Suddenly, Lin Feng turned around and flashed back towards them. He raised his hand, his gigantic death sword dominating the earth and sky. Two great emperors were stunned. The death strength bore down on them. They had the impression they were going to suffocate. Die! Shouted Lin Feng furiously. The millions of death stamps descended from the sky towards those two great emperors. Be careful! Shouted the other two frantically. However, it was too late. The death stamps bombarded the two men, and they exploded. The two other great emperors were stunned. Lin Feng was stronger than them in all aspects. As expected, no ordinary great emperor could compete with him. Blood splashed everywhere. The two other great emperors' faces paled. They couldn't defeat Lin Feng. He could defeat them in one strike. When Lin Feng appeared in front of them, they felt chilled to the bone. Death chi surrounded them. Lin Feng was staring at them with his terrifying ice-cold eyes. Lin Feng released more death stamps in waves. The stamps moved towards one of them. His face turned deathly pale, and his whole body stiffened. He knew that he couldn't do anything against Lin Feng. He suddenly jumped backwards, but he also looked at Lin Feng's eyes. Death Dao intent descended from the sky and crushed him. He immediately died. Piss off! Shouted the other sword cultivator desperately. He released as much sword strength as he could. Golden lights crossed over into the space and sliced through the air. The great emperor's sword strength was terrifying. However, he was facing Lin Feng. During the meeting of the continent of the Nine Clouds, Lin Feng could have already destroyed ordinary great emperors easily. A few years had passed since then. Even though he hadn't leveled up, his death Dao had already almost reached perfection. With his physical and soul strengths, he was even more terrifying. His eyes had also become even scarier. Now he could easily destroy great emperors unless they were geniuses. Of course, Lin Feng felt pressured when he faced celestial emperors. Their cultivation was much more stable, especially in terms of soul strength and spells. Right at that moment, a celestial emperor had appeared in the distance, and Lin Feng sensed his terrifying energies. After killing the two sword cultivators, Lin Feng turned around without hesitation and fled using short-distance teleportation deployment spells. The people found the scene strange. A celestial emperor from the sword sect was chasing an emperor? Strong cultivators from the sword sect were arriving from every direction, their swords humming furiously. Some people stood proudly in the sky. Amongst them there were two people, Qing Heir and the young man from GU Ministry. In front of them was a terrifying cultivator. Even though he didn't release any kind of strength, the aura around him was oppressive. That's the celestial master of the Seven Knights, a celestial emperor. He's soon going to become a holy great emperor. Ordinary celestial emperors can't compete with him. According to legends, his death Dao has reached the last level already, and will soon be at the top of the last level. He can instantly kill countless people with the power of his mind. Surprisingly, he's here. I wonder whether it has something to do with that emperor? Gossiped the crowd on the ground. The celestial master of the Seven Knights glanced at the corpses on the ground calmly, but on the inside, he was surprised. He said indifferently, that cultivator's death Dao is terrifying. He's only an emperor, but he can kill great emperors this easily. He's a terrifying genius. But he's very old and still an emperor. He's probably been an emperor for hundreds of years, said Qing Heir. An emperor is an emperor. No matter how long he's been an emperor, his understanding of cultivation is incredible, especially his understanding of Dao. Many people fail to understand Dao properly. Look at other emperors at the top of the Huangqi layer. How is their understanding of Dao power usually? Replied the celestial master of the Seven Knights calmly. Qing Heir remained silent. Outside of Long Night City, Lin Feng had re-entered the gloomy forest. He released a special qi around him, the qi of his spirit's world. In his spirit's world, His soul could fuse together with the earth and sky easily. My soul can't fuse together with the earth and sky in the outside world, but it can in my spirit's world. However, I want to do things properly and become a real great emperor, thought Lin Feng. He forgot that a bunch of terrifying cultivators were chasing him. Suddenly, he jumped onto a mountain and stopped breathing. It was like he had disappeared suddenly. After a short time, the strong sword cultivators arrived and inspected the area, but found nothing at all. His chi had simply disappeared from there. The strong cultivators were stunned. They glanced around and started destroying some mountains nearby. However, they couldn't see Lin Feng. After that, more and more strong cultivators arrived, but they didn't find Lin Feng either. He ran away. The cultivators were shocked. So many strong cultivators, and still he had escaped. However, had Lin Feng really escaped? He didn't want to escape. He wanted to break through to the Di-Chi layer. In his spirit's world, Lin Feng was seated cross-legged. He released his soul. It could easily fuse together with the earth and sky here. In his spirit's world, if such a concept existed, he would have become a great emperor. However, such a thing didn't exist in his spirit's world. Lin Feng didn't feel any different. I made this world. There are cosmic energies. In the past, I could use the cosmic energies of the outside world. And I could use the cosmic energies here too. And now I can make my soul fuse together with the earth and sky of my spirit's world easily. But I can't become a great emperor. Lin Feng raised his head and sighed. In this world, there are no emotions or feelings like in the real world. It's not complete. This world improves as I level up, as I become stronger, as I progress in my studies of cultivation. Maybe someday, this world will be complete when I reach the maximum level on the path of cultivation, just like the man who achieved Buddhahood, and in the end turned into a demon. When conditions are ripe, success is naturally achieved. Maybe someday, my soul will be this world. Maybe then, in the twinkling of an eye with the power of my mind, I'll be able to change everything in this world. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled as if he had suddenly understood something. Chapter 2237. Fighting against a celestial emperor in his spirit's world, Lin Feng calmed down. I can't break through to the Di-Chi layer because I am not ready. My understanding is deficient and my state of mind as well. I am too irritable and impatient. I'll level up when it's time. He calmed himself down. To become a peerless Buddha and attain Buddhahood, a Buddha had to go through the 8 distresses and understand reincarnation. They had to understand these things to become a Buddha. They had to understand Buddha's strength and purify people. They had to teach other people too. If a Buddha could become a peerless cultivator, Lin Feng could too, right? His path was different. He had his own destiny. In the fortune shrine in the archive room, Lin Feng's clone was holding a book. He put it down, took a deep breath, and said to the diviner calmly, "Teacher, I know what to do." "Oh, that's great," replied the diviner. When he saw that Lin Feng had calmed down, he smiled. "Your cultivation levels are different from other people. If you can't break through to the Di-Chi layer, maybe you'll find another way." Lin Feng remained silent. He looked at the diviner in a meaningful way, and nodded. There were still many strong cultivators where Lin Feng was. They kept destroying everything around them, looking for Lin Feng. The celestial emperor was there, proudly standing on sword and tent in the air. Lin Feng's chi had suddenly disappeared from this area. He was hiding his chi, but no matter what, they were going to find him. The celestial emperor suddenly gazed into the distance. A thread of chi appeared and suddenly, sword lights emerged from his eyes. That person had reappeared. He was hiding really well. The sword sect watched Lin Feng. This guy probably had a treasure which allowed him to hide, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hide so well. People moved, sword strength descended from the sky. It was terrifying. "You're the one who killed people of my sect, the sword sect?" asked the celestial emperor coldly. Lin Feng didn't reply. He glanced around, counting many sword great emperors. He said calmly, "Your sword cultivators are too weak. The great emperors of your sect can't compete with me. I'll give you one opportunity now. You and me, we fight one-on-one, what do you think?" How arrogant. When the crowd heard Lin Feng, they were astonished. He had challenged a celestial emperor. How humiliating. This outsider was just too arrogant. The celestial emperor looked amused as he stared at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was arrogant. It was the first time that he had heard of an emperor challenging a celestial emperor. He waved, and the great emperors around Lin Feng moved away and gave them space. The celestial emperor walked towards Lin Feng and said solemnly, "You killed 5 of my great emperors. I'll kill you." Lin Feng released earth and demon cosmic energies. He wanted to see how strong a celestial emperor could be in a battle. That way, he would also be able to see how strong he could be with the strength of the Huangqi layer. Would he ever be able to, as an emperor, kill celestial emperors easily, like he had killed great emperors? This celestial emperor was extremely strong. If Lin Feng managed to resist him, it would mean that he was able to fight against celestial emperors in general. However, Lin Feng couldn't afford to be careless. He had to focus on defense rather than offense. Demon and earth cosmic energies were perfect for defense. Your cosmic energies are not bad. But do you think you can resist my attacks that way? Said the celestial emperor icily, when he saw Lin Feng's demon and earth cosmic energies fill the air. You, a celestial emperor, are fighting against me, an emperor, and you seem so proud, said Lin Feng mockingly. His opponent looked surprised, but then he smiled indifferently. Indeed, as a celestial emperor, fighting against you, a tiny little emperor, is nothing glorious. However, I will kill you mercilessly. Are you ready? Attack, replied Lin Feng calmly. The celestial emperor nodded. He released strength in waves and roared loudly. His energies turned into ancient swords. The celestial emperor remained motionless, as if the earth and sky were attacking, not him. An incredible amount of strength turned into a deadly gigantic sword. Lin Feng felt oppressed and threatened. That gigantic sword was also oppressing his soul, not just his physical body. Great emperors' souls have fused together with the earth and sky. He's a celestial emperor, so his soul and the earth and sky are really in symbiosis. It's like he isn't the one who is oppressing me or my soul. It's like it is the earth and sky. However, I know it's his soul strength which has fused together with the earth and sky, thought Lin Feng. The atmosphere around him turned into swords and moved towards him. Could Lin Feng block such an attack? Lin Feng waved his hands and ancient words appeared around him, resonating at the same pace as the earth and sky. He released a terrifying sword intent, but it was useless. His energies were destroyed by the gigantic sword. Die! A massive amount of strength filled the air. Lin Feng raised his fist in an ancient punch. It contained an incredible amount of strength. He attacked the gigantic sword continuously, but it continued moving forwards. Lin Feng's sword qi continued surging out from him. How strong, thought Lin Feng. He continued punching the gigantic sword and finally, the gigantic sword stopped 3 qi in front of him and broke. A strong wind pushed Lin Feng back and made him step back 3 times. He was staring at the celestial emperor. He sensed the celestial emperor's strength and indeed, a great emperor couldn't compete with a celestial emperor. Besides, it was just the beginning. Sword strength continued condensing in the air. Suddenly, there were many swords around, and all of them were dangerous. Kill! Shouted the celestial emperor icily. The gigantic swords descended from the sky and moved towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's qi rolled around him. It looked ancient and immortal. He used an ancient punch again, and millions of fists appeared in the air. Space was riddled with gaping wounds. Humph! The celestial emperor grunted coldly when he saw that Lin Feng could block his attacks. He was surprised. His hand streaked across the sky. Sword trails appeared in the sky behind it. It looked like the edge of the horizon. Lin Feng paid attention. His punches all disappeared. Lin Feng knew that if he used his physical strength to stop the attack, he was going to get critically injured. Am I really unable to resist a celestial emperor? He wondered. Actually, he could resist celestial emperors, but the celestial emperor he was facing was extremely strong. Ordinary celestial emperors couldn't compete with him. There was a huge difference between ordinary celestial emperors and his opponent. He condensed Holy Spirit swords, and finally their energies collided. However, the celestial emperor continued releasing more sword attacks, which streaked across the sky. He could release sword attacks instantly. At the T&D level of a celestial emperor, many powerful spells, skills, and techniques could be carried out by fusing the soul together with the earth and sky. Using the power of one's godly awareness, one could carry out attacks in the twinkling of an eye. Lin Feng's cosmic energies turned into empty space cosmic energies, which then turned into a curtain of light. The cosmic energies kept changing and allowed him to block some attacks. Around the celestial emperor, the sword sect looked calm and serene. Nobody intended to attack, they were just watching the battle. They were convinced that Lin Feng was going to die any time now. He couldn't escape, and he couldn't defeat the celestial emperor. The celestial emperor looked at Lin Feng mockingly. He disappeared from where he was and turned into a beam of light. He raised his hand, and sword lights pierced towards Lin Feng. His sword lights looked like a rainbow, and the sun shone upon his attack. It was an incredible thing to see. Chapter 2237-2, Sky Palace. The blood moon in the sky exploded. Lin Feng stared at the sky shaking. A terrifying chi filled the air. It was a terrifying saint's weapon. There were sublevels within saints and saints' weapons. There were half-saints, not very familiar with that cultivation level, but they were saints already. Then there were low-level saints, high-level saints, and peerless saints. Weapons were divided into low-level saints' weapons, medium-level saints' weapons, high-level saints' weapons, and peerless saints' weapons. Saint levels and saints' weapon levels were similar, but a low-level saint's body was much more powerful than a low-level saint's weapon, which meant that when a low-level saint was attacked by a low-level saint's weapon, they didn't need to worry. High-level saints' bodies were much more powerful than medium-level saints' weapons, and peerless saints could be injured only by peerless saints' weapons. In addition, there was a huge, gigantic difference between all those levels. The great demon halberd of desolation had destroyed the moon in the sky, which meant it was a terrifying saint's weapon. Let's go and see. Lin Feng and the others moved towards the terrifying chi. After crossing a curtain of ice-cold chi, Lin Feng and the others saw the great demon halberd of desolation. There was an ancient battle stage before them, and the great demon halberd of desolation was stuck into it. There was a dead demon king. He had been cut by the axe of the halberd. It was daunting to see. The great demon halberd of desolation was radiating a terrifying demon chi, which seemed like it was going to destroy the very air they breathed. The high priest of the celestial sound shrine stood on the battle stage and said, "Who killed that cultivator with you, great demon halberd of desolation? Who even managed to seal you, great demon halberd of desolation, for such a long time? You contain grief and betrayal chi. Is it because the one who was killed using you is your real master? Grief and betrayal?" Lin Feng and the others were stupefied. They felt the chi of the great demon halberd of desolation carefully. As expected, it really did contain some grief chi. Lin Feng looked at the high priest. He was right. The one who had been killed by the great demon halberd of desolation was its master. But that meant the one who had killed him was even more terrifying. The high priest of the celestial sound shrine took a step forwards, and terrifying soundwave strength filled the air. Lin Feng and the others sensed the invisible and intangible power. A force carried Lin Feng and the others away. The high priest didn't want to kill them accidentally with his chi. Boom! A terrifying blood-red light moved towards the high priest of the celestial sound shrine. The atmosphere around him turned into a hell filled with blood and darkness. The high priest took another step forwards. The atmosphere was trembling. The buildings around them exploded. The great demon halberd of desolation seemed reluctant. "He's dead already. You should find another master," said the high priest patiently. The weapon began to vibrate. It wrenched free of the corpse and rose up into the air. In the distance, someone was watching. However, when the great demon halberd of desolation passed next to him, he turned into blood fog and disappeared. The great demon halberd of desolation didn't even touch him. "Fearsome," said Lin Feng and the others. They watched the great demon halberd of desolation disappear in the distance. Had the halberd been sealed there for a very long time? "Master, what is the cultivation level of the great demon halberd of desolation?" And the one who was killed? Yi Zhiyin asked the high priest. The high priest turned around and looked at Yi Zhiyin. High-level saint's weapon. Yi Zhiyin was astonished. So the one who had been killed was a high-level saint. And the great demon halberd of desolation was a high-level saint's weapon. So the one who had killed him was a peerless saint. Was he still alive? If he was still alive, was he still in this forbidden territory? In the sky, the moon which had been destroyed reappeared. It contained a terrifying amount of blood-red demon chi, and would illuminate that area forever. After a short time, the whole pit of hell was filled with a corroding demon intent. The blood-red moon contains demon intent, and a terrifying corroding strength. When that moon disappears, the door of the pit of hell opens again. You came in, that was pretty reckless, said the high priest, looking up at the sky. What? The fat guy was astonished. Yi Zhiyin frowned. She could already sense the corroding demon chi. If you're not a saint, you can't resist those corroding energies, said the high priest. He disappeared. In his eyes Lin Feng and the others were definitely going to die. But there was a woman who knew him in the group, and he didn't want her to die, so he warned them. Otherwise he wouldn't have cared. That demon lake chi could corrode our bodies, said Yi Zhiyin, pulling a long face. Her life strength surrounded the others. They understood how the demons outside had become demons now. The blood moon was still in the sky. Very quickly, Yi Zhiyin's life lights were being corroded. Are we really going to turn into demons? Said Qilian Shan, pulling a long face. A thick earth armor appeared around his body. After that, armor appeared around the others as well. But it was useless. The armor was quickly corroded by the demon intent. The blood moon in the sky was getting bigger and bigger. The fat guy was the least resistant. Wounds appeared all over his body and demon intent penetrated into his body through them. He was slowly turning into a demon. No, shouted the fat guy furiously. He didn't want to die. He had come to explore the mystery of the supreme ancient pit of hell. Not to die. Together, shouted Lin Feng. They made a circle, and all of them released life strength. At the same time, evolution life patterns appeared on the ground. It was the first time Lin Feng had used life patterns. He transformed his god chi of the earth and sky into life chi as well. And a great deployment spell surrounded the group. Immortal energy cannot be destroyed. Yi Zhiyin was astonished. She was from the life shrine, and she still couldn't release such an incredible life strength. The demon intent in the sky was terrifying. It could easily corrode her life chi. And now it corroded Lin Feng's life deployment spell. But the life strength was so powerful that it recovered quickly. Qilian Shan kept turning into a demon, and then recovering and reverting to human again. The two antagonistic strengths kept competing. Even though the demon intent was more powerful than the life strength, the reason why it resisted so well was because the life chi contained immortal strength. The fat guy was trembling. He knew that without the immortal life strength, he would die instantly. Hold on and you'll be fine, said Lin Feng grimly. His body was also being corroded by the intent. But thanks to the immortal strength in his body, he recovered faster than the others. The corrosion on his body wasn't even visible. Boom boom boom. Strength streaked across the sky and thunder rumbled. Lin Feng and the others raised their heads and saw a terrifying saint's weapon dash to the skies towards the blood moon. Great demon halberd of desolation. Lin Feng raised his head and saw the great demon halberd of desolation cut towards the blood moon in an explosion of power. The blood moon cracked. The great demon halberd of desolation released a terrifying amount of strength and tried to destroy the moon. The great demon halberd of desolation doesn't like that moon. Why does it keep attacking it? The halberd was a saint's weapon. It was alive. The moon had reappeared, and it attacked it again. It also began to hum angrily. Thunder rolled as demonic power surged. Lin Feng and Yi Zhiyin were astonished. A saint's weapon was attacking a moon? Demon chi kept pulsing around them. The blood-red moon kept releasing more and more energies, and a blurry outline appeared within. It was a castle. A peerless cultivator was seated on the palace. He looked like a terrifying demon, holding a blood-red blade, its tip stuck in the ground. Was the moon the demon king's grave? Or his coffin chamber? At that moment, Lin Feng and the others All the demons and strong cultivators who were in that world could see that scene in the sky. They were all shaking. The Sky Palace, what's the date tonight? When Lin Feng saw that, he was astonished. He remembered that sentence, the Sky Palace. What was the date? Chapter 2238. 10,000 Beast City. Lin Feng was staring at the attack, and suddenly released even more empty space cosmic energies, dazzling golden lights intertwining. The distance between him and the attack seemed much bigger, as if he had appeared in another world. Lin Feng used the Great Empty Space technique, which he had obtained from the Fortune Shrine. It was similar to the So Close Yet So Far technique. Of course, with empty space cosmic energies, it was much more powerful than the So Close Yet So Far technique. At a certain cultivation level, it was easy for enemies to break free from the So Close Yet So Far technique, which is why Lin Feng had stopped using it at some point. However, the Great Empty Space technique was from the Fortune Shrine. It was extremely efficient. Of course, against much stronger cultivators, Lin Feng couldn't use it for an extended period of time. An incredible amount of sword lights passed next to Lin Feng, but didn't touch him. Many people frowned when they saw that. Even the Celestial Emperor was startled. That spell was powerful, if it had allowed him to dodge the attack. However, he didn't lose hope, and continued attacking. A gigantic hand hurtled towards Lin Feng. Sword strength appeared and turned into a cage, trying to imprison Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. He couldn't compete with a Celestial Emperor. However, he could try various attacks, and see if they could pose a threat to one. Die! Death Dao moved towards his opponent. Millions of death stamps emitted furious droning hums. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with death intent. At the same time, 9 explosive words floated around him, and an ancient chi filled the air. A gigantic sharp sword moved towards his opponent as an evil shadow appeared. Humph! The Celestial Emperor grunted coldly. He was staring at Lin Feng aggressively. Lin Feng's Dao power had really reached the last level, it seemed. His death intent was powerful. It could even corrode some of his own life. His death stamps and his death swords were also scary attacks. No wonder he could kill ordinary great emperors easily. No emperor could compete with him. Shadow sword, said the Celestial Emperor icily. Many shadowy swords appeared around him. Lin Feng pulled a long face. He couldn't resist this attack. Go! Lin Feng released as much death strength as he could, and then started running away. He understood that he could not defeat this Celestial Emperor. However, when Lin Feng turned around, he also felt unsafe. His heart was pounding. Someone's sword moved towards him. His attacks have already started to regain a natural state. Our teacher's brother is slowly becoming stronger, and he'll soon become a holy great emperor. Thought a great emperor. He was amazed. His teacher's brother was so impressive. However, the most fearsome part was that Lin Feng, a trivial emperor, could hold on so long against him. Just a moment before, Lin Feng's attack had even posed a threat to their teacher's brother. He was insane, and he had incredible fighting abilities. Lin Feng broke a talisman and disappeared. Only whistling deployment lights remained behind him. He was gone from their field of vision. Empty space deployment talisman. The sect members were astonished. That was a teleportation empty space deployment talisman. They couldn't see where he had gone. A sword light streaked across the sky. It was initially supposed to attack Lin Feng, but instead it just pierced through nothing. But the Celestial Emperor didn't stop. He continued chasing after Lin Feng. He was a Celestial Emperor. He had to kill Lin Feng now, or he would lose face in the sword sect. Lin Feng moved quickly, breaking several deployment talismans, and teleporting himself continuously. He soon disappeared from the Celestial Emperor's field of vision. Behind the Celestial Emperor was a group of great emperors, who continued following him. Behind them, another group of strong cultivators appeared. The strong cultivators from Jiuyu's ministry. The Celestial Master of the Seven Knights was with a group of strong cultivators, and they quickly caught up with those from the Sword Sect. However, when they saw that Lin Feng had disappeared, they were stupefied. They continued chasing him until they arrived at the foot of a castle, with some strange pillars and stones. There were all sorts of shapes, birds, lions. They all looked lifelike. A terrifying bestial chi emerged from the castle. Great Imperial City. When the celestial emperor of the sword sect arrived in front of that castle, he stopped chasing Lin Feng. He knew what this place was. They were in the middle of the animal forest, and there were 8 great imperial cities here. Human beings rarely dared go here, including people from Jiuyu's ministry. They didn't want to offend the animal cities. After a short time, the celestial master of the 7 knights and the others also arrived and stopped. They looked at the city, then at the sword sect's celestial emperor and asked, Jianchen, are you scared of going in to chase him? Jianchen was the sword sect's celestial emperor. He hesitated despite himself. There were many cities in that forest, and in many of them, human beings and beasts lived together, but animals ruled over them. However, in the 8 great imperial cities, human beings were usually in danger. If they died in there wasn't anyone able to do anything about it. So the strong cultivators of the sword sect didn't dare go inside. These cities were mysterious. According to legends, there was a peerless cultivator here, the king of the 10,000 beasts. Of course, it was only a legend. Few people knew whether the king of the 10,000 beasts really existed or not. But many people thought that if people said that, it had to be true, especially since Jiuyu's ministry let them live there. If there hadn't been such a terrifying cultivator, they would not have let them live so close to Long Night City. Jiuyu's ministry were the rulers in Long Night City. Everybody knew that Jiuyu's ministry had never fought against this mysterious influential group, which was situated in the neighborhood, even though they had lived next to one another for thousands and thousands of years. Of course, maybe the cultivators fought sometimes, but nobody knew about it. Everything was kept secret. Celestial Master of the 7 Knights, are you interested in that cultivator? Why did you chase him up to here as well? Jianchen asked the Celestial Master of the 7 Knights impolitely. The Celestial Master of the 7 Knights wasn't very friendly. Let's go, said the Celestial Master of the 7 Knights calmly, and then took his group of people into the animal city. Jianchen was startled. His sword intent started emitting furious whistling sounds. The sword sect followed too. However, they had wasted time, and finding Lin Feng wouldn't be easy. Actually, Jianchen had overestimated himself once again. Lin Feng hadn't tried to escape that much. He hadn't changed his face or chi either. He was walking through the animal city slowly. He realized that this animal city was different from other animal realms he had been in before. The bestial chi here was even thicker. It surrounded the whole city. It was like a sealed animal world. The vault of heaven was made of bestial chi here too. It was impossible to break it. Lin Feng was right. The 8 great imperial animal cities were situated in 8 different positions, but they were surrounded by the same thing. There was only one entrance, and Lin Feng had gone in from there. Actually, the 8 great imperial animal cities had another name. When considered as an aggregate of cities, they were called 10,000 Beast City. Animals are obstinate and unruly. There's a fierce competition between them. Lin Feng glanced around. The buildings were wrecked, not maintained at all. There were holes everywhere in them. Animals liked having their own territories and expanding. Some beasts around him were walking in their human shapes. Some others were in their animal forms. And some of them were even gigantic. At that moment, Lin Feng stopped worrying about not being able to break through to the Diqi layer. He tried to cheer himself up. He wanted to understand the world properly. Even though he had his own world, he wanted to understand the outside world. Besides, if he wanted to make his own world perfect, he needed to understand the outside world first. If 20 years weren't enough, then it would take 30 or 40, it didn't matter. Of course, that was the worst case. Chapter 2239. Great Emperor Bai's daughter Lin Feng's hair was still messy, but he didn't look as sad as before. He looked natural and at ease. He had read many books about people who had had great lives, and who had accomplished great things. They had studied a lot, and had become terrifying cultivators. Even though Lin Feng had been through a lot in life, from the beginning, he had always succeeded. Everything had gone smoothly in his life, except when he was at the top of the Zunqi layer. and hadn't managed to break through to the Huangqi layer. Even though back then he had seen that as a failure later on, he had solved the problem and succeeded. Ever since then, his journey had been moving forward in a very positive direction. Each time Lin Feng faced a difficulty, it was an opportunity for him to become even more determined. Many beasts had gathered together in front of him. They were close to a mountain near a frozen lake. At the top of the mountain, there were a few extraordinary figures. Those people are descendants of the king of the 10,000 beasts. They have the highest potential to join his territory. A few beasts were talking. There were a few young people up in the air, all of them animals. Some of them were descendants of the great imperial city's leader, the king of the beasts. They were extraordinarily talented and strong. In ice chambers beneath the lake, there were other beautiful women wearing nice clothes. They were protectors stronger than the younger ones. I came from so far away. Is that how you receive guests? A young man asked calmly. His eyes looked sharp and dazzling, and his arms were crossed on his chest. We told you to piss off, said the bunch of women impolitely. Hee, you're rude, arrogant and overbearing. You're not like the former protectors, said someone else icily. An ice-cold energy moved towards them. Insolent, said a proud and sharp voice. A dazzling finger moved towards the young man who had just talked. Come here and we'll see who's arrogant, said the young man aggressively. His voice was sharp and collided against the lake. Ice broke and shattered loudly, audible from far away. At that moment, Lin Feng arrived and looked at the lake. He was surprised. Those young people looked extremely strong. They were all great emperors. Of course, it wasn't easy to know exactly how old they were, but most people in that group were quite strong, and there were many battles taking place around. That lake isn't bad. It's time for me to take a bath, thought Lin Feng. Since he felt more relaxed, he was also in the mood for a bath. His figure flickered. Some people turned around and looked after him in a strange way. They looked amused. What's that guy doing? They wondered. Lin Feng was now above the lake. Didn't he know what that place was? Lin Feng indeed didn't know what that place was. The water was ice cold though, and Lin Feng wanted to have a good bath. He needed to feel clean. The group of women looked at Lin Feng and heard a splash as Lin Feng dove into the water. The women were astonished. Their expressions suddenly changed. They all pulled long faces. However, other people looked extremely amused. Someone dared dive into the water. Some people stood above the lake and remained vigilant, and didn't dare go inside. At that moment, Lin Feng was deep in the water, and an ice-cold energy surrounded him. He gazed into the distance, and was startled to see chambers. In one of them, there was an incredibly beautiful woman in white clothes. She raised her head and looked back at Lin Feng icily. There's another world underwater. Are those the palaces of the beasts who live here? Lin Feng suddenly understood. He had seen a few people around so he hadn't thought too much, but now he understood. Lin Feng moved towards the buildings and looked at the woman, asking, Your Excellency, is that your chamber? The woman ignored Lin Feng, just staring at him icily. Lin Feng had the impression he was going to start freezing. At the same time, an explosive voice spread through the air. The woman raised her head and froze the water of the lake. A white layer of ice appeared with a crackle. The ice kept cracking until it broke apart, and the voice disappeared too. Miss Bai, since you're here, why not come and stay with us? Said someone at that moment. The woman's body turned into an ice-cold beam of light, and she rose up into the water. When Lin Feng saw her leave, he shook his head and resumed his bath. He took out a sword and shaved with it. After a short time, he looked handsome and clean again. His eyes were black, his hair was soft and shiny. Lights surrounded him, and he changed clothes before heading back up to the surface. Above the lake was Miss Bai and many other people. However, the atmosphere wasn't peaceful. At the same time, the celestial master of the 7 knights and Qing Er arrived. When Qing Er saw Miss Bai, she looked hopeless. She felt ashamed of being inferior, both in terms of beauty and strength. Who's that? Whispered Qing Er. Her fellow disciple was next to her, and staring at the woman. His heart was pounding. Great Emperor Bai's daughter, answered the young man, after coming back to his senses. Qing Er frowned. Great Emperor Bai's daughter, no wonder. Back in the day, Great Emperor Bai was famous. Even the great imperial beasts feared him. However, Great Emperor Bai focused on cultivation. In the end, he hadn't managed to become a saint. He had tried to become one, he had fallen, and left a daughter behind by Yu. She was extremely strong. However, after Great Emperor Bai's death, many people had started provoking her, because they wanted to get married to her. For that reason, there were always explosive battles around the lake. Then, Great Emperor Bai had returned and killed many strong cultivators, so people had stopped provoking her. Even though people knew that Great Emperor Bai wasn't the real Great Emperor Bai, they still feared him. Nobody knew what Great Emperor Bai had given to his daughter to protect her. "Everybody, what do you want from me?" asked Great Emperor Bai's daughter, glancing at the crowd icily. The temperature decreased all around when she said that. Miss Bai, before Great Emperor Bai's death, he had been to the territory of the king of the 10,000 beasts territory, and then returned to become a saint. He became a terrifyingly strong emperor. However, you must know what happened in the territory of the 10,000 beasts. A young man spoke up at that moment. The crowd was startled. That guy knew. Many people thought that Great Emperor Bai had died, because he had been to the king of the 10,000 beasts territory. It was also why many people kept provoking her. "No comment," said Bai Yu icily. "If you want to fight, come." She released a terrifying strength which filled the air. Her snowy white dress fluttered in the wind. She was breathtakingly beautiful as energies filled the air all around her. There was some loud splashing just at that moment. A figure in white clothes emerged from the water. Many people were surprised and looked at him. It was a young man. He looked handsome, and his eyes were dark and dazzling. He looked like a righter of wrongs. But he also looked calm and composed, as if all this had nothing to do with him. A man. Many people were astonished. Apart from Great Emperor Bai, there was a man down below. "Haha, I wouldn't have thought you had a boyfriend already. No wonder you keep rejecting us," said someone. Bai Yu looked angry though and asked, "Who are you?" Lin Feng looked at Bai Yu and answered calmly, "I just wanted to have a bath in the water. I didn't know there was someone down there. I'm sorry, Mississippi. You're the lunatic who just came into the water?" Bai Yu's eyes glittered with ice-cold lights. People around looked surprised. The insane man who had just gone into the water. That insane cultivator? He was surprisingly handsome. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.